the young lady opens her eyes to the sound of someone screaming for her sister to wake up. Afterwards, the girl looks at the baby, who simply asks her to open her eyes. The main character then wonders if this is a dream, but all this looks like a memory from a past life, so it seems like this is the next day after she plunged into eternal sleep. And the director of a local company, which is the third son of a large conglomerate, flirted with her. And 3 weeks later, while she was trying to get rid of him, it seems the truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and crashed into them. And after the accident, the girl was reborn as the eldest daughter of Baron Delford, until she remembered her past life. I realized that Claire was unhappy, but she was the daughter of a baronial family, and that even sounds good. The girl understands that it is not a golden spoon in the mouth, of course, but a silver one is nothing, and also the level of civilization there is far from modern. And of course, she doesn't have as much fun there as in the old world, but she doesn't have to work, and such is the fate of the nobility. The girl also thinks that she could live like this and not deny herself anything for another 30 years. Well, now, the girl suddenly hears someone addressing her as a sister and asking if she is okay. The girl then thinks that Claire, too, should have hated Eliza, simply because she's no longer the only child in the family. The girl had beautiful blonde hair and blue eyes like precious stones, which Claire so envied. And simply because Eliza was born with all of this, her sister hated her. And yet now the girl, with tears in her eyes, claims that she called so loudly and wonders why her sister did not wake up. The main character realizes that this is a dream about the day when memories from her past life returned to her. And when the red-haired lady woke up, she immediately hugged her sister. And the blonde had tears in her eyes, claimed she thought her sister had already died. She realized that to her, Eliza was a child who needed to be cared for, and also as a child who had no one to rely on after her parents plunged into eternal sleep. She had no reason to hate this girl. A little while later, the young lady claims to be alive. Then someone approaches her and claims to have figured it out and asks why she doesn't open her eyes. Then the young man addresses her by name, and the main character asks what he is talking about. Then she turns around and asks if it's Sir Eric. The young man then asks if she's awake, and the girl simply reaches out to him to test whether it's real or not a dream. The guy then tells the young lady to take a deep breath. And then the girl realizes that this is all reality, and she's also surprised. She immediately screams and jumps out of bed. However, the young man immediately wraps her in a blanket and tells the young lady to cover herself. However, the main character screams that he himself is naked. So what difference does it make? The young lady also thinks she has something to cover up. Then the young lady notices the guy tense up and, shocked, thinks she can't believe it. And then he asks how this happened. The young lady realizes it was Eric Klausner. He is a senior student at the academy where Claire studied and also the Duke of the Klausner clan. The young lady, unfortunately, is the daughter of a simple baron. And now she's completely uninterested in handsome men and directors. Eric is an elegant northern nobleman and a cold character. He wasn't interested in other people, but he hated Claire. And the young lady understands that they never understood each other. They also argued often, but that was 3 years ago. Her student days have long since become just a memory, and the young lady realizes that Claire is very beautiful and quite sociable. And somehow they decided to have a few drinks together. And then they went to rest on the second floor. And the young lady realizes that she felt it. Even though she barely remembers it, she definitely really liked it. At this point, the guys ask if she's really forgotten everything. And the young lady replies that not all, and she remembers how they did it. To which the young man says that it is understandable. The main character asks him what he's talking about, and whether he acted like a wild animal last night, and is now playing the victim. The guy then apologizes and claims he shouldn't have drunk so much. The main character then claims it's going to snow tomorrow. Eric is a little surprised and asks what she is talking about. And Claire replies that he apologized to her and last night was a mistake. The young man replies that he didn't do it on purpose. And the main character claims that she can say whatever she wants, but she's still to blame for the dinner. She can also apologize if he wants. The guy then asks if it was a mistake. Claire asks if he really wants to push it all onto her. After which the girl says that, okay, and it's only her fault that this happened. However, the young man wonders if she just wants to forget everything, to which the girl also asks, why make a mountain out of a molehill? Well, the young man claims that this is important, and asks if they will pretend now that nothing happened. Claire then wonders why he keeps asking such stupid questions. The girl then asks him if it wasn't a mistake, what does he want? And also, do they really want to take responsibility? The young man is silent for a while after this, and then replies that the girl is indeed a Southerner from a family of simple defense, and not at the same level as the Klausner family, and he will have to come to terms with that. Claire understands that Eric's words have meaning in this world, and the Klausner family is one of the 3 strongest families in the country. The girl is the daughter of a commoner, so they're not on the same level. The man claims that even the head butler of this estate has a title higher than a baron. The young lady then understands this, but thinks that even being born into such a family was a great success. After which, she claims that she is shocked, even though the guy was telling only the truth. And also, that even if the emperor comes in there and says that they are now a family, she will be against it. The girl also thinks what this young man can object to, and in this situation, he has nothing to say. After which, the main character claims that she thanks him, but will refuse. Claire understands that no matter how much she looks, it was just a fleeting desire. And the girl claims that, to be honest, she doesn't feel a drop of joy. She also understands that not everyone will throw themselves at him and ask him to marry her. After which, the girl also claims that they are both to blame, which is why she wants to just forget about everything, and that the Duke would do the same. But the young man was only interested in whether she wanted to say that he was just trash, who would take the girl's innocence and not be responsible for it. But the main character then wonders who said it was her first time. However, at that very moment, the young lady realizes she's said too much. She understands that chastity before marriage is considered a virtue for any noble girl, which is why he is so surprised. But she wasn't lying. She simply counted her previous life. Then the young lady opens the dressing room. She sees a beautiful dress there and asks if she can wear it. The young man replies that it looks just right for her. The main character then thinks what a good preparation this is, after which she claims that this outfit seems to cost as much as 3 of her evening dresses. The young lady also wonders if he was prepared for just such an occasion, or if he perhaps has a different owner. But then the young lady just grabs the cape and claims that she needs a carriage. So let the young man call a servant who can keep his mouth shut. The main character realizes that she is not this guy's fiancée, and not even the lover with whom he was seen in public, so there is nothing to worry about. But the young man then wonders, what if she suddenly has a child? The main character is a little angry about this, and also claims that her relatives on her side will only be happy if a child is born from Duke Klausner, and she'll contact him if that happens, so the guy shouldn't worry. Well, the young man just won't take her there and asks if it's not obvious. The young lady then asks, wouldn't it be better not to report something like that? But the young man only wonders what she's unhappy about again, since he said he'd take responsibility. A little while later, the butler enters the room, and the Duke suggests that they calm down a bit, and also to come to one's senses and talk. But the young lady replies that there is no need for this, and she may be a little out of her mind. But the Duke is definitely fine. After which the young lady bows and heads towards the carriage. When she finally arrives home, she immediately runs to the house and realizes that she will never get so drunk again. Then she enters the estate, and the butler asks where the girl has been. The young lady merely tells him to prepare a bath and insists she hasn't disappeared, but the man exclaims that he was so worried. After which, the guy also claims that it seems that something happened to Miss Eliza, and the main character is interested in what exactly. The butler replies that she came early in the morning alone, and the young lady asks where Martha was. The servant replies that she too returned this morning, and it seems the missus has escaped from her. The protagonist understands that Martha looked for the girl all night, and then she asks what happened after that. The man replies that the miss returned and immediately went into the bedroom, and also locked the door and did not come out again. And also it seems he heard crying. The main character then knocks on her sister's door and claims that it is she, and asks her to open the door. The little girl then opens the door, a little hesitantly, and takes her sister by the hand, and the main character asks what happened. After which, the little girl pulls her sister into the room and closes the door. The main character is then a little surprised and asks what happened. She also looks at her little sister and realizes that it doesn't just look like dirt. After which, the young lady sees how her sister begins to cry and wonders what happened. Claire realizes that yesterday was Eliza's graduation from the academy and her debut in high society. Claire went to the capital to attend a party, and she really wanted to take a photo of her sister. Well, the girl also understands that she did not accompany the girl because there was a party planned in the dorm with her friends for the whole night. Now the little girl just asks her sister what she should do because she saw something she shouldn't have. Claire asks what she's talking about, and the blonde just falls to the floor and claims she can't tell. The main character leans towards her sister and hugs her, after which she tells Eliza to calm down and to tell her everything because they will definitely figure it out. The lady with red hair also asks what her sister saw, but she replies that she cannot say because if anyone finds out what she saw, everyone will be in danger and everyone will plunge into eternal sleep. After which, the blonde claims that she needs to escape. Claire wonders if this is related to the girl's boyfriend and also realizes that Eliza had a relationship. A little while ago, the main character asked the girl if she would tell him who he was, and the little girl answered that he was a man of high status. The young lady also asked if Eli trusted her. The little girl merely replied that she had promised that if everything went well, Claire would be the first to know. The main character understands that in another house, the girl would have been scolded and punished. But Eliza is 20 years old, and there is nothing strange in the fact that she has a loved one. Claire also believed that he would not do anything stupid, but asked him to promise her 2 things. One is to take care of yourself, and the other is for the girl to ask her for help. Claire realizes she didn't really believe the dorm story, and yesterday, the blonde was the most beautiful girl in the world, so she probably wanted to spend time with her beloved. The main character also claims that if the little girl is afraid her parents won't approve of her relationship, she should. But the blonde then screams that no, after which she claims that this man has fallen into eternal sleep. A short time later, the protagonist is already leaving her sister's room, and the butler turns to his mistress and asks if everything is all right. Claire replies that she's sleeping and everything is fine, and that something really scared her yesterday. So let the man bring her some warm water, because she needs to wash her face. The butler insists he'll ask the maid, and that he still needs to prepare Lady Claire's bath. However, the main character insists that can wait. He should just bring her a change of clothes. And she also collects things, to which the butler is a little surprised, and the main character affirms that they would go home when they were ready. Claire realized that this man was of high status, and Eliza's cape was no less in price and quality than the dress Klausner had given her. Now the main character says, "What a fucking underdeveloped society this is." She also understands that if this is related to high-ranking aristocrats being plunged into eternal sleep, the village baron's daughters will quickly sort it out. Last night, the girl saw something terrible, and her boyfriend fell into eternal sleep. And the main character, looking at her little sister, thinks what happened to them. A little while later, the maid is already very surprised by this story, and the main character says that Martha should understand the story, which no one can tell, to which the woman agrees. And the young lady says that she should help Eliza get better. She also repeats once again that no one but them should know this story, and asks if the woman understood, to which she replies that, yes, she would never disgrace their honor. The young lady then realizes she'll need to speak with the maids. She also understands that this may remain a deep scar on her heart, but if the danger is really great, then you need to leave the capital as quickly as possible, and a little while later, the young lady is already taking up karate. When the main character also goes there, she remembers the Duke, but thinks that now is not the time to reflect on her own mistakes. The Duke is in his room at this time, wondering if he did the right thing. He also realizes that some people would have noticed the girl was in his bedroom anyway, and it won't do him any particular harm. But the young lady could find herself at the center of a scandal. Although the guy thinks, what should he worry about there, since this woman doesn't care about such things? The guy also thinks why Claire was so angry, because even though it was sudden, she should understand everything, because they both did something crazy last night. The red-haired lady usually hates him and has a bad habit of becoming very polite when she gets angry. And then the young lady called him Duke, her eyes shining. The Duke also turned to the butler and asked if there was any news. Well then, someone else comes into the room and asks what news Eric is waiting for them. The boy then realizes that this is his mother, that is, Duchess Louise Klausner. And even though she was a stepmother, Eric never hated her even when his father found a new wife. The guy already understood his rights, obligations, and duties, as well as the fact that the Duchess's place could not remain empty for long. Louise was always kind to the guy. He responded to her with respect, and that was their relationship. Now the young man is wondering what the woman wants, and she claims that the guy spent a lot of time at home, but didn't even come down to eat. And now he's up at such an early hour. The young man replies that he had work to do, and the woman asks if that's the kind of work that shouldn't be done in the office. And in the bedroom, the young man then tells his mother that it's personal, to which the woman replies that she understands, and that Eric is already a grown man. So there are things he can't tell even her. And she heard that Pavel bought a dress that was on display at Edelweiss. The young man then once again asserts that he has already said that this is a personal matter. The woman then wants to say something else, but the guy interrupts her and says that he will tell her about it when he finds a solution. The blonde realizes that almost 3 days have passed, and Claire should have already fallen behind. Well then, the butler suddenly cries out to the master, and he asks what happened. The man replies that His Highness the Crown Prince has been found dead, and his body was discovered in the Modrel forest. It all looks like a deliberate attack, and the bodies of 2 servants were also nearby. The escort captain has disappeared, and the search for him continues. The blonde then claims that he is going to the palace, to which the servant agrees. So his mother grabs him by the sleeve and asks if he's okay, but the young man just walks away and suggests they talk later. 5 years later, a boy with blonde hair and blue eyes is riding with Claire, after which the young man turns to his aunt and says he can't see the sky. They are in the capital of Rommel, the Aran Empire. The young man then claims that there are such tall buildings there, and the main character understands that she has lived in Delford all her life, so this is surprising even to her. At this point, the nanny turns to the boy and insists that the mistress is already tired, so let the young gentleman show her. The young man then insists that the cloud is not visible behind the houses, and the main character at this time understands that 5 years ago, 9 months after they left the capital, Eliza gave birth to a boy. Claire then turned to her sister and insisted that she had asked her to take care of herself, and she did promise. But the blonde just told her sister that, oh well, and let her understand. It's such a joy. The main character was a little worried about her little sister at the time. She also recalled how other people said what an unfortunate lady she was, because she had crossed the line before marriage. Someone also told the girl to behave properly and not disgrace the family, but such words did not break Eliza, and the girl claimed that she would love this child again. He was very dear to her. Claire then told the girl to think about herself too, because her life did not end after meeting him. Eliza replied that of course it did, and it made much more sense to her. After which the young lady smiled, and she asked if her sister would help her, and if this would be her only nephew, and if she should treat him well. The main character then wondered how she could not love this child. And even when Eliza sank into eternal sleep, giving birth to this child, the girl could not and did not want to hate him. And in her previous life, her friend boasted of hundreds of photographs of his nephew. The main character also thinks that this is not her child, but he is beautiful, and this is not because she is his aunt, but for objective reasons. And this boy's mother was very beautiful. But in any case, now we need to think about something else, because the girl is going to the capital to make Elliot her successor. However, after a little while, the young lady becomes depressed and realizes that there are only problems there. After all, the noble lineage needed to be protected and the spouse's rights preserved, and even the adoption process was incredibly complicated, so she had no choice but to go to the capital herself. But Elliot would have had to go to the academy anyway, and the problem couldn't be avoided forever. But the girl still thinks that everything will be fine, and 5 whole years have passed. The assassins had long since been found dead, and the case had reached a dead end, and there were no remaining connections to Delford. The effects of the Crown Prince's eternal sleep should have worn off by now. At this time, the boy turns to Martha and tells her to look, because they sell clouds there. The main character understands that this will be a good experience for the child. Martha, however, insists that Rothenburg is one of the largest cities in the world. They then stop at a hotel called Innenhof. The man there claims to be honored to welcome them. He's also the hotel manager. But at that very moment, a boy jumps out at him. The man is a little surprised. The main character turns to the young man and asks what he should say when he bumps into someone, and the boy apologizes to his uncle. The man tells the young gentleman that everything is fine, and his bright head just bumped into something so unsightly. The main character then tells the man to simply accept his apology, because the boy is still little, but he should behave more modestly, after which the man merely bows, and the young man turns around and tells the Baroness she's sorry. Then someone says everything's fine and the manager isn't even from their family. He also speaks politely, but at heart he's no gentleman. And it's best not to be so frivolous if you don't want trouble. It turns out he's the owner of a weaving house named Roger Carson. The man then simply asks how he dared to behave like that, after which he states that they will leave their luggage on the first floor. And the guests are probably tired from the journey, so they prepare a bath, after which the main character thanks the butler and tells Marta to take Iyad inside. After the maid comes inside, the young man with red hair kisses the lady's hand and says that they haven't seen the Baroness for a long time. The main character asks if he has something urgent, but the guy simply asks if he can't even say hello if it's not urgent. Claire claims it's annoying, and the young man says that if he doesn't even say hello to the aristocrat who owns 51% of the business, and if his best customer is a worthless traitor, the heroine then says, it's true. The young man insists that the Baroness is highly respected in their company. The protagonist realizes that 4 years ago, textile weaving underwent significant changes. Looms had improved greatly, although the workers still had to do the work of setting the stencils and the looms. This was back then, when everyone was very prejudiced. The Delford family visited the weaving workshop and, having looked at the fabric, realized that it was of very good quality, and it's done faster and error-free. Roger dropped everything and immediately went to Delford, and there he saw a weaving loom that was almost completely automated and required only one person to operate. The guy, looking at this, claimed that it seemed he should prepare the contract right now, and the young lady understood that he would not miss such a chance, after which she claimed that she was not going to sell this textile to his company. And it's also about investment, because she wants a share of the production. Claire wanted to be a shareholder in the entire process, but the reason was that she didn't want to take over the existing market. Also, the machine can produce an overwhelming quantity with the same quality, and this will most likely create a new market. Claire wants to make textiles accessible to ordinary people. A short time later, they arrived at the workshop. The young man then claimed that the new machines had already been ordered, and that highly qualified workers were not needed for these machines. They have already found stencil makers, and they also did not skimp on other workers to ensure that the final product would be of high quality. The guy also claimed that a train station had appeared there. The main character realizes that Delford is located right in the center of cotton cultivation, and nearby is a town known for its spinning industry. So the young man asks if the lady had thought it all through from the start. The main character replies that she chose the location for the railway station when she was not yet 10 years old, and she can't stand the smell of trains. After which, the young lady asks if it's hilarious. However, the young man wonders if she really understood at that age that she needed to take control of the transport capacity. After which, he asked what the young lady was talking about. The young lady then insisted that they had done a great job and that it was out of the question, and also asked how much she could invest. The young lady also claims that she is their main partner and asks if they are afraid of losing her. And the young man replies that it seems the girl misunderstood him and that it is not worth interfering with because he really likes Mrs. Clare for his superior knowledge and insight. Claire then insists that he's definitely flattering, and he also thinks that she understands what he is talking about. But this is not genius or insight, because she simply came from the world of developed capitalism. And in any case, their business flourished, and after 4 years of work, they monopolized the textile market. But then the young man asked if she really was going to marry Mr. Sherwood. The main character answered yes, after which the guy told her to choose better than him, and he smiled at the young lady, after which he asserted that he meant that if all that was important to her was that her husband was a commoner, then he would also do. After which, they go into the room of another man, and this is Delford's legal advisor named Gray Sherwood, and this man is the one Claire is going to marry. The red-haired boy insists it's just a formality to register young Mr. Elliot, and if that's the case, the young man adds in his thoughts that he'd like to participate in the selection. The butler at this time is only angry and wondering who this bastard is that is trying to flirt with their Baroness. And the young man with red hair claims that a man who knows the Baroness so well would be perfect. Well, the main character then claims that people say that if you sit down, you will want to lie down. After which she asks if he is going to become a nobleman with her help. Because she makes a lot of money, the young man thinks he's willing to be her lover. Then the guy says that if the lady doesn't mind, they could get married. However, the main character interrupts him and asks what other alliance they're talking about. Gray, however, claims he thinks the conversation is already over, after which he covers the young lady with himself and thanks the guy for leading the Baroness. The main character then looks at this guy and also remembers something and claims that she needs to rest and they will also talk about the trade union or whatever later. Then the main character says goodbye to Roger and also asks where Martha is, since they should have arrived by now. The butler replies that the young gentleman is already asleep. Hey, the young lady asks why these two suddenly quarreled, because she immediately understood that this would happen. Roger at this time is just angry and cursing that damn Gray Sherwood. Meanwhile, at Duke Klausner's estate, someone claims that the Duchess has spent over 1.5 million gold coins on clothing this month. However, his master tells the guy not to exaggerate, because this is any lady's clothing. It's her pride, and it shouldn't be a topic of conversation for men. The young man also claims that he told them to leave her alone, but one of the servants then cries out that only 9 months have passed, and she has spent more than 10 million and is already approaching 20. The guy understands that with that kind of money, he can buy a small territory and a title, but now he asks what the problem is. And has this had any impact on their budget? The young man understands that the ducal family is very wealthy and owns the largest coal mine in the empire, which also contains abundant iron, copper, nickel, and other materials, and even oil. Without industrial development, the northern lands were considered simply wastelands. In reality, treasures were simply buried underfoot. This region is currently developing faster than any other in the country, and now the servant insists that it isn't. And it also didn't affect the budget, because if the Duchess had simply bought a dress and jewelry for that amount, he wouldn't have said a word. But she resells them through the Marquis of Belf's merchants, who are her family, and that's where the problem lies. So the man asks if he wants to do anything, and didn't he also say he wouldn't help them? The young man then realizes that last year the Marquise's family had run up debts and wanted to start a textile business, but it had failed. The biggest loan they had was 50 million, and when the guy paid it all off, he claimed that the matter was closed. Louise begged him to fulfill his duty as the head of the family and help the Marquis, and the Marquis decided, what if he didn't save them once and for all, but decided to invest? And such a talentless man, forced to sell off his lands to pay off his debts, should rather sit quietly and do nothing. The guy didn't think about them anymore, but it was obvious that the Marquis' situation would only get worse. And now the servants turn to the master, and the blonde just sighs, and also thinks how many problems there are. After which, he claims that he has nothing more to add, and even if she sells things to help her family, he will not do anything. But one of the men argues that this is unfair to their competitors. The Duke asks if the man is talking about the textile merchants. One of them replies that yes, he thinks that the gentleman really knows about them, but he also asks if they will still ignore it. After which, the guy puts down his pen and claims that the Marquis is in any case. It will be trampled, so they cannot worry that the woman spends only on a dress and jewelry, because this is her personal business. The young man also understands that he is betting on the one who can win, but the Minister of Finance is right and it is unfair. He would definitely have wanted to apologize if their opponent had been someone else, and might even have sent an official letter, but he knows who their competitor really is, so he's not going to interfere. And he needs to forget this lady, and he can't apologize to her for this. Eric also realizes that they've started using new machines for weaving, and a way of thinking that no one else can keep up with, as well as careful and precise work. And the widespread distribution of goods is all in Claire's power. The young man also understands that this girl loves money, but she once said that she was different from him, who was a man with a golden spoon in his mouth, and she had a silver one or something like that. But the young man understands that he has no intention of looking for a woman who hates him so much. On that day 5 years ago, when he had to rush to the palace because the crown prince had fallen into eternal sleep, he wrote her a letter, but never got around to sending it. Well, the young man thinks that it would probably be even better this way, since a lot of rumors would start spreading. If he suddenly proposed to her, and then she would just run away. Although he still doesn't understand something, and if this girl hates him so much, then why that night? She behaved this way, and he couldn't understand it. A little while later, the young man left his office and realized he needed to talk to his mother. Well then, someone immediately shouts to the Duke and claims that he has urgent news. The blonde man tells the servant to calm down and asks what happened, but he breathes heavily, after which he screams that the woman has returned and he met her by chance at the hotel. But the man asks who he is talking about, and the servant replies that this is the same one, and asks if the gentleman remembers, because he bought an expensive dress for her 5 years ago. He also claims that there was a child with this girl, and the gentleman asks what the guy is talking about, after which he replies that the boy looked about 4 years old and that he was a handsome young gentleman with hair the color of golden thread, and he asked the hotel staff, but it seemed the girl had not yet gotten married. A little while ago, the maids were whispering among themselves, and one of them asked what had happened. Another replied that the boy had been caught red-handed, as he had been stealing and reading books. Another maid asked how this happened and whether the boys would punish her, but the other one said that it was true. It didn't seem like they were angry with him, and the man at the time claimed that the boy had confessed to what he had done and that he believed that smart people should be useful. After which, he asked the guy what he thought about getting a good education. This boy was Gray Sherwood, and he was Claire's childhood friend he was always at her beck and call. When the young man grew up a little, he was introduced as a student who had received a scholarship from Baron Delford, and soon he graduated from the Imperial Academy with honors and was also allowed to build his own career and earn the capital's reputation. The girl also told her parents that, in any case, she still had a lot of business in the capital that needed to be dealt with, and she believed that they needed a good lawyer to manage Delford's affairs. Well then, the man asked if the guy could really handle this. A country bumpkin is a country bumpkin. And Claire says that, to be honest, I think it will improve 30 times. The main character also claims that the more famous he becomes, the better for Delford, who sponsored him. Well, the girl understands that the main reason is that with the development of the industry, various types of contracts began to be concluded more and more often, and the number of lawyers grew every year. Everyone wanted to be the best, but Gray won, which even Claire didn't expect even now. The guy is a super lawyer. After Claire's parents fell into eternal sleep at the funeral, she read a letter which stated that he was not one of those who forgets about the help provided. After Claire's parents were plunged into eternal sleep, Gray immediately decided to return to Delford, but the main character wrote him a letter asking him to stay in the capital, as her parents were no longer with her. So she needed someone there, and if something urgent happened, she would ask him for help. Gray listened to her and became the owner of one of the most famous legal agencies in the Empire. Even then, his job as Baroness Delford's advisor remained his priority. Now the main character is thinking that maybe she should sign a short-term contract and is looking at the guy. Well, he, noticing the intent gaze on himself, asks if he really has something on his face, and after that, the young lady replies that no, and says that she is just curious. Why is the guy not married yet, and is he really afraid of being tied down one day? But he probably has a lot of girls chasing him. After that, the young man remained silent about the main character, who insisted that there would be a couple of aristocrats too, since she didn't want to intrude on his privacy, but the guy then interrupts the young lady and claims that such conversations are not very appropriate during the discussion of their marriage contract. The young lady claims it's strange that the groom wrote it and presented it to the bride. But the man tells the girl not to worry, as she can add as many conditions as she wants. The young lady only smiled after this, and also thought that it was now clear how the Baron felt when such loyalty was shown to him. After which, the main character says no and suggests leaving everything as is. The young man merely asked if she would consult with another lawyer. The main character replies that she believes he would never cheat on her, but she understands that, in any case, this is a sham marriage, and she has no desire to keep men on a leash. In that era, especially for aristocrats, marriage was simply the union of two families of the same social class, and she never understood the meaning of such unions. After all, if you love someone, you want to protect those feelings at any cost. But the girl doesn't think that this will ever happen to her, because if one day she opens her heart, even a little, she'll have to deal with the consequences for a long time. But the girl wonders what's wrong with continuing to live with a silver spoon in her mouth. Or maybe it's her fault she was born a noble woman. But even though noble blood flows in her veins, she wants to live a simple life, just like her ancestors. But then the young lady remembers how the blonde man claimed that responsibility must be taken. Now Gray turns to her ladyship and asks if she's listening. But the protagonist is only wondering why she remembered that face. And her imagination was running wild, because even though the guy looks good, his behavior is disgusting. Gray claims that he can come another time if the lady needs to think, but the girl replies that no, and she is just worried about him, and they both need to reevaluate everything. Also, the guy doesn't have to waste his time on this stupid marriage if he doesn't want to. Well, the young man replies that he's the best fit, and the main character realizes he's right. After all, This marriage is needed to help Elliot legally become the heir of the Delford family, and since marriage is a union of two families of approximately the same social class, this guy is the best fit. She also needs a man who understands and accepts her decisions, and someone who cares about the Delford family. He's also a reputable stepfather to Elliot, so to sum it up, Gray is just perfect, and he matches all the parameters. But she doesn't want to ruin his life because of this. She also understands that the guy wants to repay the debt to the Baron and will accept any help for the family. The young man at this time asserts that the Baron always said that one should not overdo it with gratitude, but he also claims that it was thanks to them that he was able to climb so high, and he wants to do everything he can to repay the debt. The main character understands that her father did give the boy a chance, but that's all. Gray has earned all his achievements and merits through his hard work and perseverance, but the young lady is worried. The fact that this is an unfair contract, and she receives all the privileges and can break it at any time. Gray, however, claims that, as the girl said, this is a very important decision, so it is better to give each other a little time to think. But the main character replies that she is asking for this time not for herself, but for him, and she is not at all against this marriage, and she is still a noblewoman, even though she is a baroness. Well, the young man then replies that this is not the case, and takes out a box and opens it. He also places it in front of the young lady, and asks if he will be able to call her by name if he becomes her husband. The main character looks at the ring and then turns to Gray, but at that very moment, someone knocks on the door. He also tells her ladyship that he has an urgent message. The protagonist then tells him to come in, after which the young man hands her the letter and claims that he was told that it could be left unanswered. The protagonist looks at this letter and realizes it's from the Duke, but she still wonders what the point of this secrecy is, if his subordinates are aware of everything. However, when the main character opens the letter and reads what's written there, then he's shocked and asks if he's crazy. The young lady realizes it says he'll arrive in 30 minutes, so she should be ready. Meanwhile, the Duke is heading off in his carriage. A short while later, the young man asks if his interlocutor wants to tell him that he can't get out of the carriage and needs to leave. The other guy replies that no, after which he apologizes and calls Eric his highness. Well, the blonde man simply claims that he's not a member of the imperial family, after which the servant apologizes. And the Duke simply turns to him and asks if the Baroness really ordered him to be driven out, after which the servant replies that yes. But then he immediately realizes what he just blurted out and claims that he didn't answer the order and didn't even know that the Duke was coming. After this, Eric only moves on and realizes that sometimes he gets the feeling the girl hates him for no reason, and that's so much like Claire. The young man understands that this girl was never happy that they knew each other and that she was always interested in him. Only personal gain. The young lady also constantly changes her behavior, as she is sometimes kind and sometimes evil, and sometimes squeamish. But if their relationship had been discovered 5 years ago, all sorts of rumors would have spread throughout the capital. However, everything should be fine now, or the guy claims that the young lady will not reject him just like that again. Well, he also wonders if she will just pretend that they are strangers. But when the man moves on, a boy suddenly crashes into him. The nanny immediately turns to the young gentleman and asserts that she asked him not to play in the living room. The Duke looks at the young man, who then bows and apologizes. Eric says everything is fine and then picks up the balloon. He asks the boy's name. The boy replies that he's Elliot, and the man asks how old he is, to which the boy replies that he is 4 years old, after which he asks what his uncle's name is. The Duke replies that his name is Eric. The young man then asks if he can give him the balloon, since it's his best one. The man agrees, but asks if the boy is Baroness Delford's son. The young man then asks if he really is. He knows his aunt, after which the Duke asks if this girl is the boy's aunt, and he answers that yes, but wonders how the uncle guessed, because he was never told that they look alike, and usually they say that he looks like his mother. The man then replies that he simply guessed, and the young man then asks if the gentleman is really a guest. So I turn to the young gentleman and tell him not to delay the Baroness's guests, after which the young man states that it was nice to meet him, and bows, and he claims he was glad to see his uncle. The Duke only smirks after that, and he also strokes the boy's head and says that he too, after which he moves on. But when he goes further down the corridor, he sees other aristocrats, and realizes that he was planning to come there secretly, but it doesn't seem to work. So he goes to the butler and tells him to take him to the young lady. The main character then only sighs, but thinks that everything will be fine and she will not run away. And although she ran away once, it wasn't because of Eric. The girl also realizes that she clearly remembers their conversation from 5 years ago, but she wonders if it should bother her. After which, the young lady thinks that it is unlikely that she does not see other problems. And if you think about it, this man is attractive not only for his beauty, but also for his character. But the problem is most likely in his gold spoon. She could have been a special person for him, but the problem is the difference in families. And also, no one will listen to a woman. They share the same status, and the girl is well acquainted with prejudices and unfounded ridicule, and she doesn't think she could live peacefully in such a situation. The girl also recalls how the Duke claimed that it was because he had to be an example for others. And the young lady realizes that this is precisely the reason. Then someone else turns to the young lady and asks if she's nervous. The girl then asks if he's talking about nerves. And Gray wonders if the Duke isn't involved. With the Marquis of Belf, these territories of the Duke are the second in the empire after the capital, and their weaving business is struggling in the north precisely because of them. The main character then says, "It's clear," but he also claims that it doesn't matter because this man is a purebred aristocrat. The girl then claims she doesn't understand why they're so obsessed with money and constantly fighting. The boy then asks if that's true, and the main character replies that, yes, and they also interfere with business in their territories, and it also seemed to her that the needs of the people should come first for aristocrats. Gray then claims that he thought the two barely knew each other, but it seems that they actually do. They are much closer to each other. The main character replies that of course they are close acquaintances. They also studied at the same academy and even had the same professor. Claire understands that their relationship was much closer than others might have thought, at least before the incident 5 years ago. But at the moment, it is in the past, and the young lady is wondering why the guy came. After which, she turns to Gray and asks if he can stand quietly next to her. She also understands that it would be awkward if the Duke started talking about that incident in front of Sherwood. At this point, a blonde man enters the room and addresses Claire. Claire asks what happened and says he looks angry, but he only wonders if the girl has any idea or if she will continue to pretend that nothing happened between them. Claire then tells him to first explain what he is talking about, and they haven't seen each other for 5 years, and she also can't read minds. The girl also understands that Eric usually behaved with restraint with her, because he is a noble aristocrat of the North, who is famous for his discipline and cold attitude. They had fought before, of course, but this was the first time he had shown anger so clearly. At this time, the young man asks if the girl is really that boy's aunt, and the main character asks what he is talking about. After which, the Duke claims that he didn't care how badly they sometimes treated each other, but he always considered the young lady a responsible woman. But who would have thought that she would be so irresponsible towards her own child? At this time, Gray steps between the two and apologizes for interfering, but claims that the guy is confused about something. The Duke then asks who he is. Gray then bows and tells his grace that his name is Gray Sherwood. He is also the legal advisor to the Delford family. Blondin then claims that they are not discussing such issues yet, so let him stand aside and not interfere. However, the guy replies that he is not just a legal consultant, and the Duke asks who he is, and is he really a member of the Delford family? The protagonist understands that it's best to stop them before her efforts are wasted. And Gray isn't just a consultant. They could soon become one family. Discussing such things in front of the Duke would be a bad idea. After which, the young lady simply tells Gray not to interfere, and he wants to object. However, the main character tells him not to worry, because everything will be fine. The young man merely nods and bows after this. Claire then turns to the Duke and asserts that he seems to have misunderstood. She also states that she understands that it may seem different, but Elliot is her nephew. They are her son. But the Duke only tells the girl to look at the boy's face, because then everything becomes clear, and the man asks how one can lie so brazenly. Claire replies that he has golden hair and blue eyes, but she is not lying, because he got them from her sister. However, the man insists there's more to it than that. He's also certain that this boy is his son, after which he asks the girl to stop making excuses. Claire then cries out that she's not making excuses and asks if he means to say that she influenced the child's personality and made him think she was his aunt and not his mother. The Duke replies that he does not accuse her of anything, but let her simply admit that this is his son. The main character then claims that she is speechless, because if this is really his child, then Eric is the dirtiest bastard in history. After all, he seduced a young girl who had just graduated from the academy and slept with her. The young lady also asks how he could do such a thing to her sister, after which the young man cries out that he didn't do it. Well, the main character then also screams that it was her sister who gave life to Elliot. And if the guy insists that this is his child, then he did it to her sister. The Duke then insists that Claire is gravely mistaken, but the young lady wonders what he'll do and whether he's really planning to threaten her. And the man claims that Elliot could become the next Duke if he is recognized as his child, and he will be the 5th-generation heir. However, the main character insists that he's her nephew and will become the Baron of the Delford family, so Eric should stop spouting nonsense immediately and leave. The cartoon then turns to Claire again, but she just lifts the hem of her dress, after which the guy says that she understands that she can't just brush him off, and he can't just abandon his child like that, and he also deserves to know who his real parents are. And then the main character says, what a man can do to start is show evidence and also find the right use for his talents and influence, after which the Duke puts his hand to his face and declares that he will return. When the Duke finally leaves, the young lady claims this man is driving her crazy. She also realizes that 5 years have passed and wonders if it's really that hard to agree with her just once. And she also knows that Elliot is not her son, and it will take him 10 days to find out. The girl, of course, would like to just show this idiot a genetic test, but this society needs to go through 2 or 3 industrial revolutions to reach such a level of medicine. So the young lady understands that she will make him apologize the next time he comes. Gray turns to the young lady and asks if everything is all right. Claire replies that it is. The guy hands her a handkerchief and claims her face is red. Afterwards, the main character thanks him and claims it's a little hot there. Gray then claims that it seems his problem with the Duke hasn't been resolved. The young lady insists that he should cool down a bit as they've been a bit hasty. She also wonders if the guy heard everything. Gray replies that they were shouting too loudly, and the main character thinks how embarrassing this is. Well, the guy claims it doesn't matter to him. The young lady then asks what he is talking about when he claims that he is the guy who was her lover. He also doesn't want to ruin their important moment with this scandal, so he'll come another time. And it seems the lady isn't in the best of spirits, so he suggests she take a break. The main character then tries to stop the guy, but he is already leaving. And the young lady then realizes that if she said that they are not lovers, that would sound like an excuse, and that would only raise more questions. So they could say they were lovers, but that's not true. Then the young lady sits down in her chair and sighs. She also covers her face with her hands, and she asks Eliza to give her the strength to cope with everything. A little while later, the protagonist is already sitting at the table. The nanny asks if the girl was planning to have dinner with Gray, after which the young lady doesn't even know how to explain everything. The nanny asks what happened. She was told the Duke had arrived. The main character then asks if she already knows, and the woman replies that, of course, because they discussed everything off screen. After which, she looks at the boy and wonders if it could be Lady Eliza. But the main character replies that she definitely isn't. The nanny says that the young lady shouldn't meet that man alone, because you never know what might happen. However, Claire replies that he is not that bad, and also thinks why she should feel guilty if he started it first, and she is simply speechless. The woman then turns to the young gentleman and asks for permission to wipe his face, and the main character then asks if the boy likes the food, to which he replies that it is, and it is tastier than at home. Then Claire smiles, and when she looks at the boy, she realizes that she and the Duke are really very similar. She hadn't thought about it before, and she wasn't sure who Eliza's lover was. Well, it was definitely some nobleman from Rommel. On the day the crown prince entered eternal sleep, many people suffered, and most of them were young aristocrats from Royale. And it looks like this girl's boyfriend was one of them. Even if he was some kind of servant, his status must be no lower than that of a count, and he could be a friend of the crown prince. since Eliza was taking a great risk. Well, no matter how much you look, they really do look alike, and she didn't give birth to this guy. Therefore, there can be no misunderstanding there. But with the Duke, the situation is more complicated. And if the father isn't Eric, then it could be the prince, who is no longer alive. The Duke's mother was an imperial princess, and they are cousins with the crown prince. Meanwhile, the boy's stepmother is sitting at the table with other women. One of the guests approaches her and claims she has a new ring, and it's such a deep blue and clear. The girl also wonders if someone gave it to the lady. However, the woman only asks the question, who would dare to give such a luxurious gift to an unmarried woman? Another girl asks if these fabrics are from the new weaving house, because they have been very popular lately. And they say that if you order a pattern from them, if you don't do it by hand, you can get the finished fabric 2 months faster. And sometimes waiting is so tiring. But her friend then tells the girl to be quiet. The Duchess then thought it was that damned weaving house again. A little while later, someone approached her and claimed that, with a little more help, they could oust their competitors from Bamberg. But the woman claimed that he had said the same thing 2 years ago and asked how long she would have to wait. However, the man asked if she thought he would be pleased to admit it, especially if she asked the Duke. The woman immediately replied that she did not. She also claimed it was more complicated than just taking money, and that Eric would never agree to spend his energy developing their territory. The man then asked why he was acting like that if he was asking his mother. But the woman insisted that the boy didn't know him well, and Eric is a person who does nothing under the influence of feelings, and also if someone resists them. These are some short nobles from Irina, and the only problem is Eric's restraint, because she would have thrown them out long ago. Another girl then comes up to the table and addresses the mother and asks if she is talking about the new weaving house. After all, some people are so stupid that they don't understand her choice, and it's better to trust her eyes than a soulless factory product. Another woman claims that this is true, and the other girl, and also says that it is true that looking at such a beautiful dress, one cannot begin to envy. Another one claims that to get this, you will have to wait a couple of months, and aristocrats must be graceful and refined, thinking how to turn up their noses in front of the highest nobles. The Duchess then smiles, and the blonde turns to her mother and tells her to try the cookies. Not only did it look similar, but she was so surprised by the taste. The woman then takes one of them, and she understands that she usually doesn't really like children. But if you ask who is the most beautiful noblewoman of the empire, almost everyone will call this girl by the name of Iris Schneider, even though she is not as beautiful as she was in her best years. But the woman admits that this girl is quite popular. Count Schneider's family. These are fallen nobles from her mother's side, and now the problem of choosing a bride for Eric is at hand. And he has a cousin who is Princess Bettina, but nowadays it is customary to avoid such marriages. Then Eris isn't the worst option, and reputation and beauty are just as important as noble birth. And their families have been friends for a long time, but Eric is not interested in anyone in any case. Therefore, he will agree with any of her choices, and will be reluctant to give up the ducal house. In other hands, therefore, it is time for her to fulfill her maternal duty. And also, the guy may be a little stupid, but he'll definitely listen to her, and the Count's daughter won't dare contradict her. Meanwhile, another woman says what a beautiful diamond it is, and raising sons is so hard, so she hopes that the Duke managed to choose a suitable lady. Another aristocrat claims that even if you get married and have a child, you will have an ideal family. And now it's become commonplace to marry dancers or singers you meet by chance. And then there's the child. The Duchess is then shocked, and one of the aristocrats then asks if she has heard the rumors, because the girl thought that she already knew. After which, she apologizes and claims that she expressed herself incorrectly, because it seemed to her that the Duke will deal with his illegitimate child. The woman then merely rises from her seat, and he asks her to forgive him. Then she heads down the hallway, wondering what kind of illegitimate child this is. But this simply cannot be, and she does not understand where Eric got an illegitimate child from. Then she calls the maid, and she comes and asks if her mistress called her, but the woman only slaps her, and then asks if she knew that Eric had an illegitimate child. The maid then turns to her mistress and insists that it's just a rumor. The Duke couldn't have done such a thing. However, the woman then hits the maid again, a little harder, and he also tells her to stop talking nonsense and find out the details, after which the girl agrees with the mistress. The Duke is in his office at this time. He also remembers how he spoke to the young lady and realizes that he shouldn't have yelled at her like that, and Claire has always been like that. She knows how to get under his skin, but he wonders how he can control himself. After all, this boy could be his son, and he also knows that the girl is not the one who will lie without reason, and he has already sent a secretary to Delford, but he simply cannot sit and wait. After which he asks one of the servants what the children like on their days. The guy replies that his son liked bronze soldiers when he was 5 years old, and the man asks if this is really true, after which he thinks that maybe he should go and buy it. But it's better to do it in person, so as not just to give it away, but to give it as a gift. After which he asks which toy store in Rothenburg is the best, to which the guy replies that this store is called the Swan Queen's Nest, and the Duke claims that then they go there, to which the guy agrees and claims that he will show the way. A little while later, they drive up to the store and see children there. The Duke then goes inside and realizes that it is immediately obvious why there are so many children there. After all, there is a beautiful flower garden outside, and the interior also has excellent decor, and such a place deserves to be called the best. After which the Duke notices something, and when he turns around, he sees Elliot there and is a little surprised. The young man then immediately closes his mouth and shakes his head. The servant turns to the Duke and tells him to be quiet, after which the Duke also signals to the boy that it will be quiet, and he laughs. Then someone else approaches them from behind, and it turns out it's the main character. The girl also wonders why the Duke is there and wonders if he's seen Elliot. The man then replies that no, and he didn't see it, and at that time the boy was around the corner. The main character then asks where he went, and Elliot smiles and realizes that she can't find him. Then the young lady turns around and starts looking for the boy again, and when she leaves, the young man thanks his uncle. The Duke then asks if they are playing hide and seek, and the young man replies that they are. He also asks if the man is his aunt's friend. The man then considers whether the guy is talking about him as a friend, and also wonders if he even has any friends. And these must be people of equal status, which means a prince or other dukes. After which the man thinks whether he can call Claire a friend, not because she is the youngest in the academy. After which the Duke replies that, yes, the boy is a little surprised, and also claims that then it is not good that they lied to each other. However, the man insists that he was hiding another friend, to which the young man replies that they weren't hiding anything bad. Eric replies that they were just playing hide and seek. The young man then smiles and asks if they are friends then, to which the man replies that he doesn't know. After all, children usually don't want to be friends with adults, but the young man claims that his uncle deceived his aunt for his sake, so he will believe him. After which the young man extends his fist to the Duke, and he only sighs, and she extends her hand in response. A little while later, the main character approaches the two, and he asks if the Duke is still there. The man replies that he is, and the young lady then looks at him, and she realizes that since he's come, she'll be able to resolve their misunderstanding. The girl also wonders how other people resolve such things, and the mood is not bad now, so he could not say anything. There is only nonsense about responsibility and so on. The young lady also looks at this guy and understands that the problem is that this is not his child. Well, the young lady then also comes around the corner near the Duke and claims to have found Elliot. The young man is surprised by this and even falls to the floor, but then gets up and with a smile on his face, says that he was caught anyway. The main character then looks at the boy, and then at the Duke, and also wonders what they were talking about without her. Well, the man replies that he cannot betray his friend's trust and tell. The boy then says that it was not in vain that he believed his uncle, after which he turns to his aunt and invites her to play with him. But the main character is only wondering if he doesn't need toys anymore, and that hide and seek is enough. The young man is surprised by this and says no, and the main character hands him the wallet, and he says that they are in the store, so let the boy buy 2 things that he likes the most, and there are 30 coins there. The Duke then says that this is too much, but the boy is only interested in whether this is true, and whether it is possible to buy him 2 whole things. Claire replies, yes, and let him figure it out himself and pay. She also asks if he can handle it, to which he replies, yes, after which he goes off with the nanny, and the main character then turns to the Duke and thanks him for looking after Elliot. The girl also claims that this child likes it when adults take him seriously, and the man replies that this is not surprising. The young lady also states that if he wants to continue their previous conversation in such a public place, that she would rather hit him over the head with a bag and go to jail for treason. After these words, the Duke remains silent, and the young lady says they won't just stand there and suggests they take a walk. The young man then agrees, and when they were already heading down the street, the young lady asked if something had happened and that he should just not say that he had come to buy gifts for Elliot. The man replies that she herself told him not to bring up the previous conversation, and if he starts talking, he'll say even more. After which, the main character just laughs. But he asks if they can do without arguing today, because if they are seen, the rumors will increase even more. And she needs to take Elliot to church, have lunch, return to the hotel, and work. The Duke then comments on how busy her schedule is, and the main character replies that his should be even thicker, and also asks why the guy is there, but he claims that the girl forbade him to speak. After which Claire says, okay, they'll drop the subject. Then they move on, and when the Duke walks, the main character notices that everyone steps aside for him, but he's always been a man who exudes intense pressure. The guy turns to the young lady and asks if something's wrong, but the girl replies that she just thinks she feels more comfortable with older people, and the man replies that he knew. However, the young lady insists she never said she was comfortable with you, and the young man insists she's always so rude. Claire replies that it's because she needs to tell the truth to avoid any further misunderstandings. The guy then claims that he never said anything that could cause misunderstanding. The young lady asks if this is true, and even when his life is overshadowed by one of them, which he can't resolve, the guy then suggests changing the subject, claiming that this isn't how he imagined toy stores. The young lady then asks if he doesn't like it, and the guy replies that it's not about him and that kids like him. He also asks how good the sales are. Young Lydia replies that she thinks it's okay, because you just have to look around. The guy replies that he was talking about his profits, and the girl probably spent a lot of money on decor and security to keep an eye on the kids. Some people visit or don't buy anything at all. Just have fun. The young lady then asks how the guy realized that this was her store, and the blonde replies that you won't find a person in the whole world who would think of such a thing, so only she comes to mind, takes on something. She sees it through to the end, and failure is unacceptable, because there are still so many things that need to be achieved. The young woman also claims she's not the first to come up with the idea of keeping customers in the store longer. The guy replies that she's the first to do so with children, and they usually don't have their own money. And here, the children can buy their own toys, and the main character understands that this guy is right, because most ordinary families send their children to work at the age of 7. If a family has a shop or a plot of land, they will help with the chores. But the man insists that only the rich will come to such a store, and if they want to spend a lot of time there, sooner or later they will buy something. However, the main character replies that for her, it is not a question of making money. She is simply trying several options at once, and some businesses are profitable, while others are not. This store operates almost at zero, but people love it, so it continues to develop. And even if their parents don't buy anything, some children work as apprentices or peddlers, saving up money and buying toys for themselves. The Duke then only sighs and says that the girl is like the owner of a casino, but the main characters do not claim that it is just a shop. The young man then claims that he is not only talking about him, and the girl asks if he knows about textile production as well. Elliot replies that he has received reports about the development of enterprises in his territories, and the main character says that it is true that their interests conflict, but she was just lucky. However, the Duke maintains that weaving houses are not created by luck alone, and her Naledi asserts that she also has a good imagination. She also understands that there is nothing surprising about this, because she can predict the future. The Romal-Aran Empire does not coincide with its historical structure with its previous world, and the climate and geography there are also different, but the hearts of people are the same everywhere. The girl also thinks about what will happen after the technology appears, as well as what demand will grow for, and so on. She is well aware of the events that have accompanied progress, and knows which products and goods have ultimately stood the test of time, and which have fallen into disuse. Therefore, she simply needs to choose from the existing options, and she can be confident of success and know where her future development will lead. This includes budgeting, investing, and creating leverage. These are not new to her, because she came from the world of developed capitalism, and this is the failure of the fatherland. But it's not just about the ability to develop a business, because she is an aristocrat and one with good skills, and it doesn't matter whether she is a low-born southerner or not, but knowledge is knowledge. After all, she's not being threatened or intimidated, nor are they trying to take away her business, and the employees are quite obedient and diligent. The girl also wonders if such conditions are being created even for her, a baroness. How simple everything is for the nobles of Rommel, and how unfair this world is for ordinary people. After all, even for the two of them, the laws and principles of this society work differently. At this time, the Duke asks the young lady if she is angry with him again, but she replies that she is not angry with him either, because this is a problem of the reality surrounding them, which she cannot solve. The young lady also claims that she knows the guy well, and for quite a long time. The young lady also understands that it would not be surprising if their acquaintance ended in nothing, and if he simply treated her as a lower noblewoman and also ignored her, then she would think of him as a higher nobleman and would not get involved. But, on the other hand, even now it is difficult to explain who they are to each other. The guy then claims that he thought the girl was more careless, but when he found out about her affairs, he was very surprised. The protagonist replies that she hadn't planned on trying so hard, but she has a child to raise, and the money certainly wouldn't hurt. The girl also realizes that 5 years ago, when Eliza returned home frightened and in dirty clothes, the girl decided that she would make every effort to protect her family, and now she claims that she has no one to rely on, and that the higher-ups, twins or more than one, always need money. The guy then asks the girl if she has ever thought about getting involved with him, but she says that it sounds like a huge stupidity. She also understands that she knows he can be relied upon, but the fewer people who know about the secret, the better. And he has a close relationship with the ruling family, and the emperor and empress are his relatives on his mother's side. Therefore, such a person cannot know the truth, and she does not want to drag him into this because she has enough misunderstandings with Elliot. At this time, the Duke turns to Claire, after which he approaches her and claims that he did not only mean Elliot. After all, he wanted to become her husband, and the guy asks if she never once thought that she could trust him. The young man also asks if she never once thought that she could trust him, and the young lady is only interested in what is wrong with him. Well, the guy asks a question in response, and wonders if he really means nothing to her. But he thought so, that they were much closer than just strangers. The young lady then looked at him with a little surprise. But then he claims that, even if it's true, the girl doesn't finish her sentence. How the guy takes her hand in his and kisses it, and also claims that she might have forgotten, but he does want to make her his. The main character is silent for a moment, but wonders if he's talking about righting his wrongs with marriage again, and also asks how many more times she has to say that she doesn't need it. The young man then claims that he was mistaken when he called it not their night, and that the girl misunderstood. After all, the problem was in the order of things, because he had to propose to her first. The guy realizes that he was going to do it after graduation, but there was no chance, and the girl quickly took the diploma and ran away. He thought it was a hint of refusal, but if she gave him a chance, he wouldn't miss it again. The main character then looks at the other people watching them and asks him what he thinks he just did. The guy replies that the rumors won't stop anyway, and asks what he'll gain by trying to silence them for her sake, and whether he will get her hand or the child. But the main character answers that no. But then someone else runs up to them and claims that the aunt and uncle are kissing. The main character is then shocked, and then he moves away from the Duke altogether. But the boy only says once again that they kissed. The man who is carrying him on his back asks how decent people can engage in such foreplay. The main character claims that he misunderstood, but the boy claims that he saw everything. He then approaches the young lady and grabs her by the dress. He also shouts menacingly that this is his aunt. The main character then lifts the young man into her arms and says how heavy he is. And the guy with red hair then asks the boy if he wants his aunt to get married. The young man replies that this is not the case, and the main character claims that she loves Elliot more than anyone in the world. The boy then says what a liar she is, and the young lady asks why, since it's true. The young man then claims that last time she said that she loved her mother most of all, and the girl replies that exactly then she loved him more than anyone else alive. The young man then says that he loves her too, and even more than his mother, after which the main character smiles. And they move on. Well, a little while later, when they already find themselves inside the building, then the main character stops and wonders how long the Duke will follow us. Then she turns to him and wants to tell him to leave them alone. But the man only asks, "Who is this guy?" The main character realizes he's talking about the red-haired boy. He also claims to be the owner of the weaving house. The guy then introduces himself and says his name is Roger Carson, and he's pleased to meet them. The blonde then looks at the guy and then shakes his hand and claims that he was told that the owner is very resourceful, but he didn't think he was that young. Roger claims the Duke may have heard comments about his father, and the young man also claims that he is the Baroness's errand boy, and he considers being chosen by her a blessing and will be grateful for the rest of his life. The main character then asks why Roger came and whether something urgent had happened. The guy then replies that he definitely is, and whispers something in her ear. The Duke only watches this coldly. Roger says a representative from a retail store in Bamberg came to see them. The main character then says that it's fine and understands that such things cannot be discussed in front of the Duke. She also understands that Bamberg is one of the largest cities in the Duchy of Klausner and a battleground for Marquis Belf's frack guild and their weaving house. But the girl also understands that this isn't breaking news, and the red-haired boy claims he didn't mean to disturb the Baroness. Claire also thinks it's not important information and doesn't understand why the boy keeps whispering. The girl then claims that the merchant has come a long way and a meeting can be arranged tomorrow, but Roger says that they will do as she says and asks if they will go to the hotel now, to which the girl agrees, after which the main character also looks at the Duke and sees that he is looking coldly at Roger. Well, the young lady wonders how it all turned out this way. She also realizes that Roger sometimes says stupid things about marriage too. And these are just jokes, but if we are talking about Bamberg, then a conflict could arise with him, and she does not want to quarrel with the Duke. At this time, the blonde asks what happened, and the young lady thinks what she can do if he is asking for it himself, after which the girl replies that this is a personal matter, so it's better not to talk about it in front of strangers. At this time, the boy turns to his aunt and talks about toys, and the main character asks if he has already chosen one. The young man then answers yes, after which he points to one side and says what he has chosen. Those bandits! Roger then says they're soldiers, and the boy insists he wants to play with them, but the main character asks what she told him, and the young man claims that it was 2 toys. The guy also insists that it's the same set, and she wants it. The main character asks how much it costs. The boy replies that it's 30 gold pieces, and the main character asks how long ago he learned to count to such numbers. The young man then also says that Uncle Roger bought it for him, and that this is something completely different. The red-haired boy claims he didn't know, and bought it because the boy had a sag. The main character then claims she told him not to buy him everything, and Roger replies that it wasn't very expensive. The Duke then also enters the conversation and claims that they are made to be bought for children, but the young lady claims that these toys were not for sale, and she also wanted any child to be able to come and play. Claire also understands that you can't buy everything you want, and that it's not about money. The young man is then only disappointed and almost cries, and the main character claims that she knows what she promised. But he can't allow this, because this place was made so that everyone could play together. But after this, the young man only cries out that he hates her and doesn't want anything else. The main character claims that they won't be able to take it home anyway, and asks how the boy is going to play with it alone. Roger then apologizes, and the young lady states that they will buy something else next time. She also turns to the Duke and tells him not to spoil the guy with expensive things either. Otherwise, she will become a bad person in the eyes of others. And the Duke asks how. Claire replies that she wouldn't think so. Well, what about the others? She doesn't want people talking, as if she were a swindler who was extorting money from him through the child. After which, the young lady begs for forgiveness, and he leaves, and the Duke watches her. After which the servant turns to him and asks if they are leaving too, but the man only tells the boy to call the store manager. The servant is a little surprised by this, and the Duke claims he's going to buy these toys, but the butler insists the lady asked for them. However, the Duke replies that he was worried because he did not know what gift to choose, and now he will buy whatever Elliot wants, after which the man tells the butler to call the hotel manager. He understands that he needs to make Elliot love him at least more than Roger Carson, and Claire is right, because the rest of them will remain silent. But the guy thinks who cares, because when the girl becomes a duchess, everyone will shut up, and they'll beg for forgiveness on their knees. Rumors spread quickly, and that's even better. After all, he pretended to kiss her in front of the local newspaper workers. And this is the simplest strategy to victory, but you can't relax when it comes to Claire. The Duke at this time tells the boy to find information about Roger Carson, and the servant agrees. 6 months ago, Bamberg's fabric stores started having problems, but before that, everything was fine. The Duke also understands that their patterned fabrics were not only selling well, but were selling like hotcakes. In the Duchy of Klausner, This city occupies a leading position in terms of money turnover and wealth, and the townspeople also spent a lot and enriched the shopkeepers. But 6 months ago, Baron Belf's Frog Guild attempted to take over the city, and patterned fabrics began selling at ridiculous prices. It got to the point where plain fabrics became more expensive than patterned ones. And although the prices for other goods were approximately the same, people went to where patterned fabrics became cheaper. Other suppliers and fabrics tried to resist the Frog Guild, and even lowered the price for shops to almost cost, but still could not compete with the reduced prices of the Frog Guild. Some shop owners gave in and they abandoned their old suppliers and tried to negotiate with the Frog Guild, but they were refused. One of them asked to reconsider the decision, but the girl claimed that she understood their feelings. However, he cannot lower the price for them, and so Roger sells almost at cost. The girl understands that they have significantly reduced production costs and increased the quantity of goods, but this does not mean that they are now simply collecting money from under their feet. After all, they need to pay both the cotton field workers and the weavers, so the final cost is not that cheap, and constantly lowering the price as Baron Belf does will not work, because he receives money from the duchy. Here they really are collecting coins under their feet, and the girl claims that they will not sell them fabrics cheaper, so that it wouldn't turn out that they bought from them for less than cost and sold them to the guild. The man then asks what she's talking about. The girl claims it's because it's already happening. She also thinks the situation is amusing, and that the guild is buying patterned fabrics from their weaving tome and selling them cheaper to other shops in the city. The price is very cheap, so the fabrics are sold outside of Bamberg, and in fact, she buys back her own fabrics from the Fratch Guild at a price lower than she sold them. And this is money out of nothing. And she also buys cheap fabrics from the guild in Bamberg and then sells them in other regions at high prices. And it seems their merchants still haven't understood that they are buying cheap and selling expensive. Their only goal is to get rid of them in Bamberg, and the girl understands that they think that with the lowest prices they can capture the entire market. But this will not happen. After all, the world is connected to railways, and they don't even see their value, but they still have to think about such various merchants as Hans. The girl then claims that it is not only a matter of competition, and she will think about selling more than just fabrics through him in order to increase profits. But the man asks if there is a chance that the Duke will help them, and the main character asks what he is talking about. Roger claims he made it clear the Duke had nothing to do with the matter. But the man insists he doesn't have to repeat himself, since he lives there and knows his master's character. It's just a pretty rude question, but the guy is wondering if the Duke is shrinking. If the mother of his child asks for help, the main character is then shocked, and the man wonders if this is true, because he read in the newspaper that it was the Duke and the Baroness. The red-haired boy only laughs after this, but then sends the man away, and he claims he wanted to tell him something important, but completely forgot. The merchant then asks him to wait, but Roger only tells the Baroness that they'll go. The main character then remains in the room alone and is silent for a while, after which she sighs heavily. A little while later, the girl reads a newspaper with headlines asking who the real father of the boy with golden hair is, and whether the academy is really a place for love. The main character then thinks that she is lucky that in this time, it takes 7 hours to draw a normal illustration, and it turns out not to be very detailed. The girl also understands that she doesn't know about the Duke, and that she was drawn abstractly, but the rumors still spread. After which, the main character thinks that these are irresponsible bastards who are threatening. She's also glad that Elliot can't read the press yet, but it's only a matter of time. After which, the young lady opens one of the chests of drawers and states that we need to hurry. She also recalls Gray claiming that he knew the young lady only wanted this marriage for the sake of appearances, but marriage was marriage, and he would be glad if the young lady went through with it. The girl understands that this is no problem, since she plans to get married anyway, and Gray is a good man. He's not just suitable, but also attractive. After which, the young lady opens the box and wonders if the rumors will die down if they get married. Although this could become a reason for an even bigger scandal, and Gray will have nothing but problems. The main character also remembers how the Duke said that it was not their night that was a mistake, but the order of his actions. After which, she realizes that nothing has changed from the fact that he said this, because she does not want to become the wife of Duke Klausner, and she doesn't want to be the Cinderella who seduced a high nobleman. And she also doesn't want the duchy to be swallowed up by Delford. And although she is not as proud of her lineage as other aristocrats, she does not want her family to become part of Klausner just because of marriage. The girl also claims that her work dragged on for 5 years longer than she wanted, and this worries her more than it pleases her. The young lady also looks at her ring and realizes that the guy knew the size of her finger. But this is not surprising, because everyone there knows that she will marry Gray, and probably someone helped him. Well, the girl also thinks that Elliot still stands out too much, and she is not sure that even a quickly played wedding will work, because the problem would not be so big if not for the Duke. Now the main character also hears someone knocking on her room and telling that person to come in. Then the man apologizes to the Baroness and claims she has a guest. The main character, somewhat surprised, asks who it is, and the guy doesn't even know how to say. After which, he claims that Madame Duchess Klausner, she said that if the lady doesn't show up right now, the young lady is even more surprised after this. A little while later, the girl approaches the reception area and sees this woman, and he realizes that she looks like a typical evil mother-in-law from a morning soap opera. But villains always appear in a beautiful form, in full splendor, after which the young lady comes to her table, and the woman realizes that the young lady looks pretty good, but she doesn't wear any jewelry at all. However, then she does see a ring on her hand, after which she asks if she is Lady Delford, and also the daughter of Baron Delford. The main character says she's mistaken, because she's a baroness, not a lady. But the woman says she doesn't care, because the girl is still just an ordinary southerner. She also understands that some pathetic girl from a baron's family is making her wait in a place where only commoners come. After which the brunette also says that the girl will still have her husband's title after the wedding, so let her be proud as much as she wants, and she will pass it on to the heir, if she gets it on time. And a young lady may not be ashamed that she got married at a marriageable age, but there is nothing to be happy about either. The Duchess also asks whether her poor relatives simply turned a blind eye to everything. After this, the main character only clenches her fists and understands that if you have patience, you can avoid a bad ending. After which the young lady sits down opposite her, but the woman immediately insists that she didn't give permission to sit down and that it was so rude. But Claire insists that it was the Duchess who came to see her, and she is the hostess, and the woman is the guest. So the Duchess then asks if the girl has no manners at all, and what kind of behavior is she allowing herself? But the main character says that since the lady had come such a long way, she thought she was carrying something important. Claire also realizes that everything is just like in TV series, and the brunette then replies that, yes, what can you expect from a man who is not ashamed to have a child before marriage? Claire then realizes that all she needs is patience, but she doesn't think she can handle it. The brunette then waves her hand, and one of the maids places a bag of gold coins on the table. The protagonist asks what it is. The woman argues that an illegitimate child cannot be an heir, but this is also her son's responsibility. So let her consider this as support for his upbringing, and also let the young lady not think about any nonsense and not make a noise, and also raise the child in Delford. The Duchess also claims that at least the boy won't get hurt in this village, and the girl isn't even thinking of coming to the capital to cause trouble. Claire wonders if she's not even going to check anything. And what other village is she talking about? And does she even know what Delford is? Although, compared to Rothenburg, it's certainly nothing but fields and factories. But this place can compete even with the Marquis of Belf under the protection of Duke Klausner. And the girl also wonders if this woman even understands who she is talking to now. After which, the young lady hands over the bag of coins and claims that she doesn't think it's enough even for a down payment. The woman then asks what she's talking about. The young lady says it's just a down payment and asks if she's seriously considering paying her off with that much money. The brunette only gets angry and insists she said it was for the child. Well, the main character claims that she doesn't seem to understand at all how much it costs to support children, and that it's more of a bribe than help. And the woman doesn't want her to marry Eric. Granada then asks what she's talking about and whether this is really a bribe, and the main character insists that she should prepare at least triple the amount she'll receive if she becomes a duchess. After all, if she refuses such a title and remains a single mother with an illegitimate child, the Duchess then screams in shock, asking what she was talking about, and the young lady states that it seems the woman has spent about 10 million of her family's gold this year, and judging by what she wears, another 5 million is needed to maintain her dignity, and she also spends 15 million a year. And for 10 years of marriage, it will be 150 million. and then she expects to receive about 500 million. After this, the brunette only gets angry and asks how the girl dares to say such a thing. But the young lady merely asks the madam if her blood pressure has spiked, and she looks rather shady. The woman then merely exclaims, "What a devil the girl is, and how dare she count the duchy's money? And also, is it really possible to hope that she will become a duchess?" Well, the young lady then asks, why not? After all, Eric had been waiting for her for 5 years. But after meeting Madame, it became clear why he was looking for a wife. And Duke Klausner lives a good life, but he constantly has to worry about Madame. And he came to her because he could not stand it anymore. The woman then just jumps up from her seat and screams, "How dare the girl say such a thing?" The young lady then understands that she is a victim there and closes her eyes, and also thinks whether he adores her too much. But she still won't escape. Well then, someone tells Mom not to move and then knocks the tea out of her hands. It turns out to be the Duke with the boy, and their woman then looks at her son in shock. There's also a baby there, talking to his aunt. Journalists are already thinking up new headlines for their newspapers. One of these will be the Duchess trying to bribe the Baroness. And does she really think that everything can be solved with money? The next headline will be about whom the Duke will choose, his mother or his wife, and whether the stepmother has remained a stranger to him. After all, she is a woman who steals the family's money, and the Duke's treasures flow into the Duchess's family. The blonde man tells his mother that he asked her not to interfere, and the woman doesn't even know what to say to that. But the main character claims that now is not the time for this. After which, she approaches the guy, and she asks if his hand is okay, as it's very red. The Duke replies that it's not as bad as it looks, and he didn't know it would bother the girl, as everything is fine. But the main character then only turns to one of the servants and tells him to bring cold water, to which he agrees. The Duke at this time gives the boy to Claire, after which he hugs him and claims that everything is fine. She's not angry, so let the young man not be afraid. At this point, a servant brings cold water. The Duke thanks him and then dips his hand in. Meanwhile, the maids help the Duchess wipe the remains of tea from her dress. And the woman at this time is shocked to realize that they are not particularly close. But he knew how to behave around her, and now he suddenly tossed the teacup in her direction. The woman also recalls what she and Claire had talked about, and wonders if the guy had heard everything. Now the blonde man simply reiterates that he warned the woman not to interfere in his personal life. However, the Duchess insists that she is, in fact, his mother, and he asks if he really looks down on her because she is not his own. And this is not some simple problem, but the wedding of the Duke of the Klausner family. After this, the young man only remains silent and looks at the main character, who will possess Elliot, after which the young lady understands what is going on and gives the boy to the manager and tells him to take him to his room, to which the man agrees. Meanwhile, the Duke turns to his mother and asserts that her points are not required when it comes to the wedding of the head of the family, and he is not an irresponsible man who will abandon his woman and child. And if Claire agrees, he will marry her immediately. The woman then tries to object, but the guy only raises his hand, and the Duchess is shocked to realize that this guy has never shown her such disrespect. The guy then just approaches the young lady and extends his hand to her, after which the main character looks at her and sighs. And then he's all over her, and he says how lucky she was that he didn't get a scar, and she's glad the guy's okay. The blonde then claims he's apologizing on behalf of the family for the problems they caused. The girl then understands that he is not the kind of person who will easily ask for forgiveness, after which she claims that the tea would only have gotten on her dress and would not have harmed her, but thanks him anyway. The Duke then asks if she will say anything more, and the main character asks if he will let her go. Claire also tells him not to even think about talking about the baby in such a place. She understands that people have eyes and ears everywhere. Also, any news will spread today, and the previous headlines have already had a big effect. This could harm Elliot, but he's lucky he can't read yet because he's too small, and he'll have to buy up every newspaper like that in Delford until the rumors die down. At this time, the guy claims that, of course, he understands everything, but the main character tells him to let her go. After all, she already has to go in today's schedule. Well then, the guy just kisses her hand, and the girl breaks off mid-sentence, after which she asks what he is doing, and asks if he really doesn't hear what she is saying. Well, the young man just looks at the ring that is on Claire's hand and remains silent, after which he takes it off completely. The main character then asks him in shock what he's doing, and the guy asks if she really likes the ring. to which she replies that it's none of his business. The Duke then simply puts the ring in his pocket and claims that it was on his wedding ring finger, which is a problem. And he missed the most important step. The main character then tells him to wait and not do it, but the guy just takes the ring off his pinky. Then she asks why, and she told her mother she wasn't against it, and the guy asks if she really thinks he wouldn't dare. Claire asks if that's even something to joke about, but the guy claims that he hasn't prepared the ring, so while he's putting it on, their main character is shocked and claims that it's a family typo and everything will only get worse. The young man also says that she can refuse, but he is still obliged to do everything right, after which he gets down on one knee and he puts the young lady's ring on her. The girl then looks at all this in shock, and the Duke asks, will she marry him? Everyone is watching and congratulating them and asking the lady to say yes. Then someone else congratulates Baroness Delford, and the main character wonders if even the hotel manager is in favor of this marriage, after which she claims that she is going to go crazy, but the guy says that if she wants to get married, it's better to spread rumors that he's the one who's been hitting on her. Claire insists he's already done that, and using the family glove to propose is going too far. After which, the young lady asks if he's completely crazy and if he even realizes what people will think. He doesn't respond that he doesn't understand why she's unhappy, since she herself complained about rumors even though there was no proposal. The girl understands that he's right, and the young man then claims that he committed a great stupidity 5 years ago, but it was deliberate. And this is not a joke, because Klausner will belong to her, and he himself will put it into the hands of the young lady. But the main character asks, what if she suddenly gets angry and starts selling the Duke's property left and right? And the guy replies that she won't do that, because he takes care of things that belong to her. The main character then wonders why he's smiling like that. The guy only moves closer to her face and then kisses her. A short time later, one of the maids claims she never would have thought the Duke had a child. Another says that he is not a little boy and such things happen, but a proposal is a different matter. And she heard that he even used the family seal to propose to the Baroness in front of a crowd. Her interlocutor then asks what difference it makes to them, since even if a duchess appears, their duties will still not change much. Another one of them says that it is true, but at that very moment, the Duke's mother runs down the corridor and calls for Maria. The girl then approaches the lady and asks how the meeting went, but she merely throws her headdress at her, after which she screams that she simply asked to find out about the illegitimate child. The girl then apologizes, and the woman begins to smash the estate's storage facilities and screams who this Baroness is and how she knows how and how much money she spends. The woman also asks if the girl showed the accounting records to anyone, and the maid replies that it was not her, and she would not dare. The Duchess then turns to the other one and asks if it was really her, but the brunette only wonders how a simple servant could know about Madame's expenses. After this, the woman only cries out in despair. Who did this then? Then someone else comes into the room and says that Duchess Louise seems to be having some kind of problem. And when the woman turns around, she sees a young man there. He is the third son of Count Krozik, and the Count is a relative of Duke Ernest, the head of one of the Empire's most powerful families. Louise was friends with this handsome young man, and for her he was the best, noble and kind consultant, not a lover. He never crossed the line, and now they're heading down the hallway. The guy claims the newspapers were full of unfounded rumors, so he went to the lady, but she seemed angry. The woman then claims she didn't expect the guy to come and feels a little embarrassed. The young man merely claims that the latest news seems to have made her nervous. The geologist claims it's all because of that ram. She's a southerner, Arden, and Eric went too far. The guy then claims that he thinks that the academy students were not very surprised by this, and he had already heard similar rumors back then, since the matter concerned the Grand Duke. And the Baroness was not particularly popular, and he also often saw her communicating with the Duke. If the Duke raised his voice with anyone, it was only with her, and she was not afraid to argue with him on equal terms. That's why he remembered her. But there was nothing else to worry about, because everything about her was surprisingly normal. She had decent grades and a decent reputation, and people said she could be self-centered with those close to her. No one understood why the Duke hung out with her, but now the boy realizes he was wrong. After which, he claims that this girl is the owner of a new weaving house, and the Duchess is shocked. The boy also understands how astonishing it is that a simple baron's family could have amassed such a fortune, and it's no problem for him that the new Duchess Louise and Baron Belf would clash. It was a battle within the duchy. But what's really worrying is that the Baroness is a noblewoman of Aran, and 3 generations ago, the northern empire of Rommel and the southern kingdom of Aran, they were united by a national marriage through the law of succession, and the child of Rommel and Aran became the heir to the throne of the new state. After the crown prince was plunged into eternal sleep, the child of the former empress was placed in eternal sleep. The next in line to the throne was the emperor's eldest sister, Duchess Victoria, but her age currently prevents her from doing so. Then came Prince Linus, who is the son of the current empress. But there was a problem with the law of succession. The Duke was in 4th place because he was the biological son of the second princess. And if he marries the Baroness, their child will rise very high in the ranking of heirs. There will be a lot of debate about what is more important to respect, the priority of heirs or the law of inheritance. Her Majesty must have been very worried, and Louise had no idea that Johann Krosik's mistress was the Empress. At this time, the Duke enters the hotel, and the manager greets him and also states that everything is prepared as he said. But the guy then asks if the Baroness hasn't forbidden it. The manager replies that she's their most honored guest and they should believe it, but the hotel doesn't belong to her. The man also understands that this guy will still become her husband, after which he also claims that over the past 5 years, the hotel has only hired those who can keep their mouths shut, and that more than one person always watches their children. The man, when he says that this is a great job, then goes into one of the rooms where Elliot is playing. When he looks at this, he only smiles and sighs, and the boy, seeing his uncle, immediately turns to him, after which he immediately throws down his toy sword and runs to the Duke, after which he kisses him on the cheek, and he thanks her. The man understands that caring for a child is very difficult, and he never considered children cute before. And he is also interested in whether the guy will love the child that he and Claire will have. The Duke also wonders whether the young man hugs him with such a smile because of his innocence, or because of the difference in his upbringing. But the man then says he didn't buy this toy just for him. He also understands that Claire said she wanted to give this set to all children, so he bought it and donated it to the hotel to make a play area for everyone, at least legally. He asked to make a similar set and also send it to Delford. Well, he hasn't arrived yet, so everything's fine. The boy then claims he knows it's not just for him, and the Duke asks if Claire is angry. The young man replies that no, and she only stabbed, after which he shows how the girl did it. The boy then asks if the man has seen her, and also offers to go to her. But the Duke replies that he hasn't, and that he has come to see the boy, after which he only says that the uncle better not lie, but the man insists that it is true, and Elliot wonders if he didn't say that he loves her, and the boy also asks if he is even going to marry her. The Duke understands that last time the young man was angry because of this, and now he asks if the boy is against it, to which he replies that no, and he likes everything, after which the Duke smiles. He also asks if the young man would like to give him something tasty to eat. The young man then asks how his aunt is, and the man insists that he explained that he came to see him, but Elliot claims he was told he shouldn't go with anyone offering treats. The Duke then insists they're not leaving the hotel and will call a nanny. The boy asks if this is true and asks if he can have some hot chocolate. The Duke insists that he can, if Claire allows it, to which the boy replies that they'll ask Martha, after which the man takes the boy in his arms and says that then they can go. A little while later, the two arrive on the floor where the nanny is supposed to be, but there they see Gray. The boy then looks at the Duke of this man's tone, after which he tells his uncle to let him go because he will go by March, and the young man runs into the room where she should be. And when the Duke is alone with Gray, he asks if he'd like to explain himself. The boy also understands that a consultant is a consultant, but this guy received the Baron's patronage, and since then has been helping Delford a lot, and although he often sees Claire, is also just a worker. However, the Duke wonders if the girl thinks the same. Meanwhile, Gray insists he has something to say, and the Duke acted like a scoundrel. The blonde asks what he's talking about, and Gray insists he deliberately started the rumors. To make things difficult for Claire, the Duke only asks if the guy calls all his clients by name, and he replies that this is a matter only between him and Claire, unlike the problem that the Duke is creating. But the blonde replies that this is also their personal matter. But Gray argues that if it was personal, then why did he go to the publishing house? And yesterday he visited 6 publishing houses to make sure, and they were asked not to mention Elliot, and also not to criticize the Baroness. The man claims he didn't ask them to write anything specific. He just wanted to make sure the child wouldn't be harmed. But Gray confirms that even if he did that, he could have kept them quiet. The Duke then gets angry and asks if the guy is really threatening him now as a lawyer, to which the guy replies that he is not, and as Claire's subordinate, and also as a person who wants to be Elliot's guardian. And he simply speaks the truth, and also knows that the Duke is one of the highest nobles, but the one who forces a girl to marry by attacking her weaknesses cannot be called a gentleman. The blonde replies that it's true, and that playing the gentleman is enough, but Gray wonders if Claire is just prey for him. After this, Eric claims that this is not his business, but theirs and Claire's, and let the guy intervene if she needs to sue, but everything else is not for outsiders. Gray claims that this concerns him, because it is impossible to court a woman until they solve this problem. Eric then asks what he is talking about, and Gray claims that he is different from him, after which silence falls between them. And the Duke then realizes that the ring on Claire's finger was indeed an engagement ring, and then he wasn't sure from whom she got it, but now he takes this ring out of his pocket. Then she throws it on the floor, and Gray watches in shock. The main character is in her room at this time. She looks at the ring that the Duke gave her and remembers how people said why the girl did not agree, and she is like a modern Cinderella. The girl also understands that they continue to talk about it, and they even leave it to her in armor. And now everyone is sure that she will not refuse him. And how can one refuse Duke Klausner himself? The Duke is not old and has not married before, so how can one not marry such a young, handsome man? The main character understands she didn't want this wedding, but she can't explain it to anyone else, and she's confused. Afterward, she becomes angry and wonders if there's any difference between news and gossip. At this time, Roger turns to her and says that if the lady is so angry, then why not sue them? He also blows his fan at the young lady, and she replies that his words make sense, because Sherwood could sue them for a lot of money. Well, if she starts to react, they will cling even tighter, and the girl understands that this is a battle that cannot be won. A couple of newspapers might close, and then new headlines will appear asking whether the lady would have denied it so vehemently if it weren't true, and the truth would eventually come out. The scandal will become self-fulfilling, and people will be drawn into it. And the girl is not one to calm down easily. But then she remembers how her father said that one day she would have problems if she did not correct her hot temper. Now the young lady understands that it is difficult to deny his words now. Even 11 years ago, during her first meeting with the Duke, if only she had simply silently admired the boy's handsome face, then all these problems wouldn't have arisen. The young man then claimed that she was too stubborn, and now the girl is wondering who to blame for this. And she herself is to blame, but then she didn't think so. So the young lady immediately jumps up from her seat and screams. She realizes the problem lies with the man proposing with his family seal, not with her. Roger then asks if the lady will agree to the Duke's proposal, and she replies that she should not do that, to which the young man replies that of course, and asks why not, and the main character is a little surprised. But then he goes on to say that, simply put, she can't refuse. The girl also understands that she doesn't care what rumors are going on about her, whether they're true or not. They can gossip for hundreds of days, but it won't affect the Baroness, and this marriage scandal will sooner or later be forgotten. But the boy who looks like two peas in a pod with the Duke won't disappear anywhere. And will they feel safe if they hide in some rural area? But that's unlikely to happen. After all, you can fence off a child with a strong wall, but his existence will no longer be hidden and the danger will grow. And even the lower aristocrats are capable of earning a little money. But now power is given not so much by money as by pedigree, and if they link their fate with Klausner, then truly strong people will not take their eyes off her in Delford, including those who plunged Father Elliot into eternal sleep. The girl also understands that Klausner didn't know about this, but created a lot of problems with one blow. At this point, Roger offers to give the young lady a massage, but Noda replies that it is not necessary, and that this is already beyond the bounds of simple flattery. Well, the guy claims that he would like to become the Baroness's lover, and that Sherwood is still an option, but he can't win over the Duke. The young lady then asks why he wants to fight with men, and maybe the problem is in him. And the girl asks why doesn't he start fighting with his mind? The young man then asks, why try if there is no chance of winning? And he is not a pervert who enjoys even defeats. Well, the young lady claims he sounds like someone who can win, and then says, okay, and he suggests that they stop talking about nonsense. and also asks if he did a great job, to which the guy replies that he did just right. But at that very moment, someone turns to her ladyship and cries out that something bad has happened. The main character then asks what happened, and the maid, all dressed up, confirms it, that Duke Klausner and Sir Sherwood are fighting. The young lady then screams in shock, wondering what she's talking about, after which they immediately run down the corridor. When they get there, a young lady is leading a crying Elliot and two men. There's also a pile of broken dishes next to her. The boy immediately turns to his aunt, and he runs up to her and also cries, and the main character, looking at the ear, understands that they could not stop them. And the guys themselves didn't seem to be planning on calming down either, which made the main character angry, and he asks how this should be understood and whether they have really gone mad. However, the Duke only speaks, so that Claire throws this guy out of here. But the main character asks his lordship if he can stop talking complete nonsense because she now wants to kill them both. Roger asks if this is how cultured people behave and scare little children, and it would have been better to throw down the gauntlet. The main character then tells them all to shut up, and then he turns to Marta and tells her to prepare the spare room because something needs to be done with their clothes. After which, she turns to the Duke and says that unless he wants to insult her even more. The blonde then turns to the butler and insists that a shirt, vest, and tie are needed, and that it's enough to dust off the pants. The Duke also tells the lady to wait for him, because he will return soon, and they have a lot to talk about. After which, the young lady tells him to go already, while Gray picks up the ring from the floor. The main character then turns to him and says the boy will go with her. The young man insists he's fine, but the girl claims that she is not from here, so let Gray shut up and follow her. When they enter one of the rooms, the servants are surprised, and Claire tells them to give them a change of clothes and also to sew on the buttons, to which they agree. The main character also says that there are robes there. Let the guy take one. The nanny, seeing Gray in shock, screams out what's wrong with him, but the guy tells her to be quieter, because Elliot has already fallen asleep. One of the maids then tells the sir to take his robe and also take off his jacket, and she will straighten it out, to which the guy thanks her. At this time, the main character strokes the boy's head and then heads towards Gray, and she sees that he's wearing a shirt and pants. The same guy pulls on a robe, and Claire says everything's fine. After all, he's not naked. Gray asks how Elliot is feeling, and the girl replies that he's already fallen asleep, but he was a little scared and it was still too early for the boy to see fights. Gray then apologized, and the main character just stretches out her hands to his face, and also claims that he has a cut on his face, and hitting a man with glasses is like trying to put him to sleep forever. The guy then tells Claire not to exaggerate, but the young lady replies that it is not about the laws, and that this guy boxed and also studied wrestling from a young age. After all, this is a long-standing tradition among the nobles of Ramel. Gray then argues that he couldn't simply run away, and the main character says that if he couldn't, then why didn't he hit back? After all, he could have evened out the Duke's nose, which was raised to the ceiling. Well, the young lady asks him why he didn't do it. Pony replies that he thought it would be stupid, but if she says no, then he could have just punched her once. The guy also says that the old bachelor lost his chance to marry right before his eyes, and even the Duke might have been a little sympathetic to his situation. The main character then claims that she hasn't told Gray anything yet, but he claims that she has already decided, and asks if this is true, since Claire is a reasonable person, and he'll risk saying that he understands her completely. The guy also thinks that even though he's not the strongest in this world, well, he always tried to understand and accept her heart, as well as thoughts, and before he tried for the sake of the Baron, and now for her sake. And maybe if everything hadn't turned out exactly this way, and he hadn't decided to face his feelings, as well as his fears, in order to overcome them, then the ring would have sat in the drawer forever. Now the guy asks if the rumors haven't reached the stage where they can't be denied, and whether the lady marries him or not, they'll continue writing such nonsense. Claire says that's most likely, and the man says that Elliot might suffer from this, and then the lady would be better off taking matters into her own hands and making the right choice. The main character realizes that usually she would laugh and say that nothing can be done, but not now. After all, she is not so impudent that you asked the person who proposed to her to remain friends, and as soon as he agreed to the contract and gave her the ring, they became partners. Gray then says that the lady doesn't have to worry about the contract, but the girl claims that she is to blame. After which, the guy claims that it was not signed by both parties, and their caution played into their hands. Then the main character apologizes to the guy, and he says that there is no need to apologize. After all, he himself agreed and understands that at that moment it was the best decision for Claire, and the marriage was needed first and foremost to protect Elliot. So let the lady not worry. The main character then tries to object, but the guy claims that he will always be faithful to her. And let the lady just not forget that he is also a part of Delford. After which the main character extends her hand to him in response, and Gray kisses her. Claire says how old-fashioned this is and that she needs not only reliable lawyers but also friends. To which the young man replies that he will always be on her ladyship's side. Then someone else knocks on the door, and the protagonist tells them to come in. Then a young man with red hair comes in and approaches Gray and says that even without glasses, a handsome man remains handsome, and their Duke needs to see this. The protagonist then turns to Gray and tells him to demand the largest possible compensation. And she tells Roger to stop talking nonsense and ask if anything happened. The guy replies that nothing special. There was just a new issue, and the ink hadn't even dried yet. Mr. Sherwood's story has come to light. The red-haired boy also claims he didn't think they would be so reckless. And then there's a staff member waiting for him in the lobby. Gray sighs, after which they even ask for forgiveness. The main character asks if he is okay, and the guy claims that he will write to her tomorrow. The young lady then agrees, after which the young man leaves. Claire then sits down on the sofa, and Roger asks how the young gentleman is feeling. The girl replies that he was crying because he was scared, and that everything else is normal, and asks if Roger has anything else to say. He doesn't reply, saying he's simply curious about the current situation. The young lady then asks what he is talking about, and Payne does not answer that he would not like to hear her story from the newspapers. Claire asks if he wants to write about it himself and become popular, but the guy insists that the girl could at least believe in him a little. Then, one of the butlers enters the room and also states that Duke Klausner will arrive soon. Roger then states that it looks like it's time for him to leave, after which he bows and leaves the room. A little while later, a young man with blonde hair comes in and says that the girl didn't run away. But the young lady wonders what he is talking about, since she lives there. And why should she do this? Claire also asks if he has anything else to say, but the Duke only asks if Elliot is okay. Claire replies that she's telling me about it and asks if she wants to apologize. However, he asks what he should apologize for, because he would do even more if it concerned her. The protagonist asks what he's talking about and insists that the Duke should apologize for the fight. The dear then says he should apologize and insists he shouldn't have scared Elliot like that, after which he also claims that he will do it personally a little later. But the girl insists that there are many more people in front of him, not just him. To which the Duke replies that yes, she needs to compensate the staff. Well, he doesn't mention the main game, but he understands who she means. After which, the guy claims he has no intention of apologizing to her lawyer, and the girl seems completely unaware of the problem that has arisen between them. The main character then asks why she doesn't understand. The Duke replies that he started it. Claire says that can't be true, because Gray is a very tactful man, and Eric must have done something first. After which, the Duke claims that this is why he says that the girl does not understand anything. And after all, two men proposed to her at once. So what other reasons are needed for a fight? Claire claims that Gray is a victim because she suggested it to him. But the Duke argues that if the young lady thinks that he gave her the ring only because of this, then she is even more stupid. But she chose him anyway. The protagonist then offers to clarify and insists that she didn't choose him because she wanted to. The Duke then approaches her, and Claire claims that she will put him into eternal sleep if he kisses her. The girl also asks if he forgot that the conversation is not over, and the guy asks what else, and Claire claims that he did send a man to Delford and asks if he returned, but the guy received the information, and she asks if he will continue to pretend that he does not understand. Eric knows he doesn't think her sister's pregnancy is a definitive proof that she couldn't have a child, but he'd rather keep quiet. The girl then claims that it is all written on his face, and she says that it is good that he is so skillful in coming up with excuses used in the newspapers, and she cannot wait to see what else the Duke comes up with. And it is also natural that she would hide her child, and that is why he is upset. After all, she wouldn't continue to deny it if she was caught in a lie, and he knows. The blonde then insists that she's the kind of person who wouldn't just run away. The young lady then wonders why he's going so far, if he hated her before. After which, the young lady claims it only happened once, and she asks if he wants to know why she ran away, because if so, then let him listen carefully. because she won't repeat it. The young lady then takes the framed photograph and hands it to the Duke. She claims it's her sister, and she looks more like her mother, and Claire looks more like her father, and they're related on their mother's side, originally from Rommel. The man says it's understandable, and the young lady claims the girl met her boyfriend at the academy. So he asks how the young lady did not interfere, and she replies that she was not planning to get married, and asks what she should have done, because it is quite normal, and all she knows about him is that he is the highest nobleman of the north. The Duke claims that he looks more like trash for now, and the young lady tells him to be careful with his words, and not just because he is her sister's boyfriend. After all, on the day when they went home, the girl returned in great shock because she saw something that she shouldn't have. The Duke then asks if this is really true, and the girl replies that her boyfriend died that day, and then her sister gave birth to a baby, and it seems they had a covenant ceremony. Eric realizes there's no longer any need to figure out who he was. After all, it was most likely Prince Jared, who had fallen into eternal sleep, and he wasn't his real brother, but a Kazan. He was a quiet fellow who often ventured outside the palace incognito, and the guy won't be surprised if he hid his real identity from the girl. And it was Claire's younger sister. The protagonist claims she intends to take the secret to her grave, and the Duke says Claire should have come to him. But the girl replies that no, because that would put Elliot in danger, and he understands what she's talking about. Even the principal was plunged into eternal sleep. The Duke argues that the boy has a right to know, but the main character claims that he is not even 5 years old, and she will tell him when he becomes older. And she told him not out of concern for the boy, because the Duke is primarily concerned with his lineage and loyalty to the crown, but she is not going to give him up or give him away, because now he is her child, and she did not give him life, but raised him from birth, and hoped that Eric would understand her feelings. The guy then agrees, and Claire asks if he knows what she wants to say, to which he replies, yes. He understands that they can't be completely sure that their relationship remains a secret, and that his family doesn't know, but there were several people who knew he was dating this girl. And the biggest proof is the child's appearance. So if they don't say that this is his illegitimate son, then Elliot will be in great danger. The main character then tells the Duke to sort this out, because he started all these problems, and she is not talking about recognizing the guy as Klausner's heir. It is better to keep the secret of his birth a secret and adopt him, because an adopted child has fewer rights to inheritance and will not cause problems for his biological children. And if they choose the right moment for a divorce, everything will be fine. The guy will then realize it's true, and then everyone will forget about this story. All the attention will be drawn to them, and all that will need to be done is to hide everything from Elliot. Some people may have doubts, but by that time, the question of succession to the throne will be resolved, and the prince, who is plunged into eternal sleep, will be forgotten. We'll have to keep an eye on the boy until he's old enough to figure out the situation. The man now claims that the young lady is mistaken, and claims that she understands that she can harm him, but he promised to take responsibility. He started this mess himself, so let him clean it up. The Duke insists that's not what he's talking about and asks why she even started talking about divorce. Claire replies that he understands that the guy is not his son, and in order to solve the problem of inheritance. But the blonde just asks if he looks like a man who gets married only to get divorced. The girl replies that he proposed because he thought that Elliot was his son, and she understands how important his pedigree is to him. Eric replies that he agrees and that it's important to him, but protecting Claire and the baby is far more important. The young lady then argues that if he wanted to protect them, he should have done nothing. After all, isn't that what a true gentleman would do? However, the guy claims that the young lady never considered him that way, so he reacts accordingly. And then the young lady also tells him to better defend his honor. At that very moment, the guy approaches her, after which he kisses her. The main character is shocked by this, but the young man affirms it. He's already explained that he'll use any means necessary. The girl replies that such an attack makes him even less of a gentleman. The author says she has no one to tell her about it. After all, if she had come to him right away, Elliot would not have had to spend his childhood in such chaos. But the main character asks why this would be, and whether the guy would really recognize him as his own son. However, the Duke then shuts her mouth again with a kiss, and says that the young lady talks too much. This guy is Jared's son, so he is related to the Klausner family, and he is obliged to protect this boy. He is also very sweet, and since the girl considers him her son, he has no choice. The main character then claims that she cannot believe it and wonders where his opinion about blood purity has gone. Eric replies that he's not going anywhere, and that's why he hates her. The young man then kisses her again, and the main character realizes that everything around her has become even more confused. A woman is in the garden at this time, cutting a flower. Someone says that Duke Klausner is late, but even if the previous Duke was unable to marry him, Louise needs to be more careful, and she thinks that the guy will fall in love with the daughter of Count Schneider. The woman then asks if the lady is talking about Eris, but she is often called a canary because of her appearance. She is definitely a bird of prey, and he will break your finger if you dare to touch it. But the little bird remains just that, and no matter how many days you puff up, the canary will not become an album. But the same cannot be said about Lady Delford, and the woman has been watching her for quite some time and still cannot predict her next moves. This girl has a huge talent for making money, and if even Eric recognized her, then she is definitely capable. Now the woman is saying how crazy this world is, or has the usual defense decided that Klausner's shiny golden spoon already belongs to her? Another woman says that it is true, but they can't do anything about it because men sometimes lose their heads when they fall in love. She also asks the lady if she has something on her mind, and the woman only asks if the Duke is really blinded by love. And also, if he laid hands on her sister, is it normal for Claire to raise someone else's child? The lady also wonders if they still haven't found out whose he is, and whether he is definitely not the Baroness's. The brunette replies that neither the servants nor the relatives confirmed it, and it is only clear that her sister was pregnant, and it also seems like something crazy was happening then. The lady then asks if the girl is sure, and she replies that many maids in the estate saw signs of violence on her, and that is true. The woman then thinks for a moment and realizes that she doesn't care what happened to the Baroness's sister, but she can't believe that Eric could do something like that. After which, she claims that something is wrong, and it is hard for her to believe this version. And also the boy appears to me to be the Duke's son, but he looks incredibly like him. And first of all, the woman asks why he is in this marriage. The brunette says that she can, because the Baron has already fallen into eternal sleep, and marrying a simple young girl and the head of the family are two different things. Her mistress then says that it's okay to lose chastity before marriage, but why lie like that? But then the woman realizes that in her place, she certainly wouldn't do such a stupid thing. That is, marry a commoner without pedigree and power. After all, then the heir would be no better, and many of the Baroness's relatives have set their sights on the weaving house. And if the nephew becomes the heir, he will weed out most of them. If this is indeed the case, then he could be the Duke's son. The mother could be the Baroness, and someone from the collateral family may have impregnated the younger sister of the woman to whom the Duke proposed. This is far more plausible than dismissing their resemblance as a coincidence. And then the younger sister's child was simply thrown away, because that is the fate of most children born out of wedlock, especially if it happened as a result of violence. But this is not so important, because what is important is that Eric Klausner's child is a child with Arryn's genes. And this is another candidate for the throne. The brunette turns to her mistress and asks what they will do, and the woman replies that he is a mudblood, and she does not plan to interfere for now. The woman also understands that there is a new candidate, but her position on the list will be low, and problems will begin if Eric promotes him. And this is not impossible, because after all, there is a law of inheritance. Moreover, the Duke is not an ordinary nobleman, and he will also receive a weaving house, and this is already a non-trivial problem. The southern regions have always relied on Rommel, a place with cheap labor that only produced food. Everything would have continued like this, but 5 years ago there began a surge in economic development and a tangled house. The fields that had once been a source of wheat were planted with cotton, and the new weaving house began to pay its workers, and even farmers generously. The organization of the entire region began, and the workers who worked for pennies in Rommel, they began to return to their homeland, and Claire Delford began to develop in an unexpected direction. She built factories on her own territory, instead of looking for a place near cities and a workforce. The girl chose the area near a large river next to the railway, and a new city began to form around the industrial zone. From the very beginning, he was completely under the control of the Delford family. At first, the woman thought Claire was crazy when she began getting into debt, but now everything has become obvious and the girl has a lot of debt, but the profit is even greater. Instead of demanding money from her, The creditors want to give even more, and she is a person who will not miss her chance. And now, she has also gotten together with Klausner, and the woman wonders if it is really because of love. Well, it's still dangerous even if their love, a real girl, has only gone so far with the title of Baroness. And the woman wonders what will happen if she becomes a duchess. After which, she suddenly cuts herself with scissors, and the maid immediately turns to Her Majesty with concern. But she says everything's fine, it's just a small scratch. Another maid then insists she'll bring some medicine and a bandage. And the woman claims that more and more people are now reporting that they can fall asleep because of anxiety. For example, Louise is not only facing the possible loss of her position as duchess, but also a new weaving house. And she has so many reasons to worry. The brunette then claims that she thinks she will need a powerful sedative, and Her Highness understands that she has said enough, and Augusta will sort everything out. At this time, someone at the station claims that marrying a commoner is incomprehensible. How could anyone raise such a daughter? These men are Claire's cousin and uncle. The man understands that this time he will definitely teach her a lesson, even if he has to hit her. And for all sons, the closest male blood relative becomes the heir, so he had to become the Boron. But the man passed everything on to his daughter, and Claire has the skills to protect the family. Her uncle understands that he knows this perfectly well, and she also knows that her brother did everything to ensure that his little daughter became the heir, and that is why she did not want to force her to give up this position. But she had to marry Charles, that is, his son, because only he could help the family become stronger. Their child will be a full heir, and Claire currently holds half the rights, so she can't go against their wishes. This was his decision as the head of the family, that is, as Delford and as the eldest. And no matter what kind of lawyer Gray becomes, he will have a past as just a person. And the girl dared to go to the capital alone to marry him. The man also thinks how she wants to make Elliot the heir if it is not even clear who his father is, and this is unacceptable. But when the young lady's uncle moves on, he is suddenly surrounded by knights. Charles then asks what is going on, and James just gets angry and then hits these knights with a stick, and he says how rude this behavior is. The knight then asserts that his lordship is waiting for the man, so he should go. A little while later, they enter a luxurious mansion, and one of the servants claims that Sir James has arrived. The man then thinks that he doesn't know what this guy wants, but he is a nobleman of Arran, and it doesn't matter whether he is guilty or not. But then the man sees the Duke and is shocked. Eric recalls how the young lady told him that the distance between Delford and the capital is big, but she still won't be able to shut her relatives up. The Duke then claimed he didn't think she'd be so rude to them, and the girl replied that she had no choice, since she wasn't the eldest son. The young man then reflected for a moment and realized that when his eldest son was gone, conflicts arose even between younger brothers. And Claire was a woman, so the girl told him to better understand this and be more careful if he was going to mention his family tree. Now the guy understands that he was not mistaken, after which he tells James that he is glad to meet him. The Duke also extends his hand and states that the invitation was a little unexpected, so he thanks for his understanding. The young lady's uncle says everything is fine, and her cousin claims it is a great honor for them. After this, they all sit down at the table, and the man thinks about what actually happened 5 years ago, and he treated Elliot well, after all. Meanwhile, the blonde insists that the holiday will be in 2 months, and James asks what holiday it is and apologizes, claiming that he doesn't quite understand. The Duke claims he's talking about a wedding ceremony. The young lady's uncle asks what kind of wedding it is, and the Duke replies that it is him and Claire, and asks if they don't know yet, because if so, then he will tell them personally. The young lady's uncle is thinking at this time what kind of wedding they are talking about, because he expected them to talk about Elliot. The Duke claims he proposed to Claire a few days ago, and Elliot will be added to their family tree. Charles immediately jumps up from his seat and asks his lordship if he is Elliot's biological father. The Duke then just looks menacingly at the young man, after which he realizes what he just blurted out. His father sits the boy down and asks them to forgive him. He also claims that it's a bit of a surprise for them, so they're not too shocked. Then the man also asks if the Duke will officially accept the guy, to which he replies that yes, after all, Elliot is his child, and asks if there are any problems with that. But the young lady's uncle is thinking at this time how the illegitimate son of a barony can become the heir to the duchy, and the Duke must marry a girl of his status, and also raise an heir if he can have children. But then the man in shock, comes up with something and understands what the problem is. And that is probably why the Duke makes the illegitimate child his heir and ignores who his mother is. The Duke then claims that he and Claire discussed at length what would be best for the child, so they will tell everyone that she gave birth to him. James says he understands, and that it will be procedurally simpler and will not raise any questions about the succession. The young lady's uncle at this time realizes that he would never have thought that his nephew would become the heir to the duchy. The blonde then thanks them for their understanding and claims that his wedding with Claire will be simple for the closest people, and for now that's all he can say. And also, if he wants to know any details about the preparations, then he should ask the butler. Meanwhile, at the Innenhof's hotel, the main character thinks that a simple ceremony means there will be little noise, but she's not going to hide. She also just wants to have some kind of family banquet. Claire claimed a while ago that in order to dispel most of the rumors, they would have such a wedding that everyone would think that they were actually in love. The Duke then asked what she was talking about and said that it would not be a problem if they just shut everyone up, to which the girl replied that she simply had no words. The man then told her to buy whatever she wanted, and she could buy newspapers or even editorial offices. Claire thinks that this is not surprising, and that such thoughts really arise in a rich man on their own. After which, the young lady claimed that she had been thinking all the time about how to deal with the newspapers, and he was offering to buy them, and how stupid it was because she still had a long way to go to become a real noblewoman. Eric simply tells her to simply buy them and share only the most minute details, because then they'll gradually forget everything. The girl replies that ordinary people do, but it's better to bombard high society with details. And the blonde then asks, "What for?" And the girl replies that she will get newspapers, spreading rumors about her, and she doesn't like it. But she'll have to endure it until they switch their attention from Elliot to her. The Duke then claims that this might help, and the main character claims that they will intercept the information channels in advance. After all, journalists understand the importance of news like no one else, just like Elliot, and even find out something. But if they control the flow of information, they will be able to intercept the distribution. The girl also understands that newspapers are the first place where rumors start, because they are generously paid for any news that can cause a stir. The blonde man at this time claims that there are many people who will grab onto any news item, and this is not a bad idea. And the young lady claims that he will have to deal with real spies to control information in secular society. Eric then replies that it's clear, and the girl says that the most important thing is to convince everyone that this marriage is not connected with Elliot, and those who know that his mother is Eliza, as well as those who think that he is the son of the Duke. The girl realizes that she doesn't think that with everything around and the newspaper rumors, they will be able to keep all the truthful information. But if the same thing is repeated over and over again, even if it is a lie, it will become ingrained in people's minds, and these rumors will become true. The eyes that are now directed at her could turn to Elliot at any moment. That's why now the girl suggests making everything so that it seems like this is the wedding of the century. The Duke is then silent for a moment, and the young lady asks what it is that the man asserts. What matters most to him is their wedding, and he would protect Elliot no matter what. But if he weren't her son, he wouldn't have accepted him as his own. The protagonist then thanks the Duke and asserts that this is important to her, after which the Duke claims that he would have accepted any of her children, and therefore said that he would do anything for her. The guy also wonders if he still hasn't become special to her, but the young lady replies that this is not the case, and the man claims that he thought that they both agreed to this marriage. Claire claims she always thought he was a handsome young man, and asks if she only likes his face. The main character says, "More." However, the guy immediately interrupts her and kisses her. The girl then realizes that he didn't even let her finish speaking, after which he says that it's the last one. But the guy claims that he doesn't know what she wants, but let her do as she pleases. The girl then asks if it's true, and asks what if she suddenly takes the diamond mine. Eric tells her to take it because it's already a family typo anyway. Well, the young lady then says that no, and she was just joking, because that's not what we're talking about. The Duke then asks if she is unhappy about something, and the Dune people note that she does not like being pressured. She also doesn't need all of the Duke's property, and the girl asks if he does everything she asks for. The guy then sits down next to her and replies that this is true. The delicate lady claims that she never wanted to get married, but she would not refuse an engagement cat, and she wants a ring with a clear, light-colored diamond of 2 carats. The blonde then says how simple it is, and the girl replies that this is only by the Klausner's standards, and if it is big, it will become heavier, and then she will not be able to wear it all the time. The young lady also takes the Duke's hand, and he says that his ring is very simple, but then she sees a mark on her finger and realizes that the guy took the title 7 years ago and apparently never took it off again. The girl also understands that she was unable to express condolences when the previous Duke fell into eternal sleep. Even if she were in the capital and not in Delford, an ordinary baroness would still never be able to enter the Klausner Duchy. The blonde man asks the girl what's going on. The lady replies that nothing, and understands that. Then she wrote him a letter, and if he had answered, then she would have come at least to console him, but it doesn't seem like he received it. The answer was written by the butler, and this clearly reflects the difference in their statuses, because if the guy hadn't destroyed this wall first, nothing would have happened. The girl then tells him to wear what he has on now and not to make anything new. Let hers look like his own. The young woman also claims that they'll write about the wedding ring in the newspapers and add that she wants to go into the diamond mining business. The young man then agrees, insisting that he shouldn't miss out on any opportunity. The young lady then claims that the whole world will find out about this wedding, and she will earn more money. The Duke merely smiled after this and said that that's exactly what they would do. Thus began today's meeting, and in the lobby of the Innenhof Hotel, 50 editors-in-chief gathered, and she bought all the newspapers. 3 days ago, someone told a man to hand over his entire share. The man was shocked. The Duke's representative claimed that His Majesty wished to obtain the rights to their newspaper publishing house and printing press while preserving the jobs of current employees. However, the editor understood that even being the Duke himself, how could he so suddenly ask to hand over his publishing house? And this was incomprehensible to the mind, since such matters cannot be resolved with money alone. The man also understood that this profession was a way to assert his social status, and he did not think that with that kind of money he would be able to start a new life. Well then, the Duke's representative claims that they are offering them a sum of 3 million gold, and he will receive this money immediately. He will also remain the editor-in-chief, and this position, as well as his salary, will remain his for the rest of his life, and no problems will arise. After all, the Klausners wouldn't be able to manage such a small business. The editor, shocked, wondered if this was all a dream. A little while later, they are already at the hotel, and the main character claims that, despite the surprise, all the invited guests have shown up, after which she invites them to sit down. The girl claims that she didn't call them to scold her, and that they were making a mountain out of a molehill. They also deliberately chose flashy headlines and published an offensive image, and now it's not she but her lawyer who will have to deal with these issues. She wants the articles to continue to appear, but less frequently. The editors are then a little surprised, and the young lady claims that with their pen, they have defiled her honor, and with it they can clear it. A little while later, people are already leaving the room, and the young lady sighs, after which she sees another guy and asks him what his question is. The young man then asks for forgiveness for not obeying the Baroness's order to leave. He then claims that his name is Casey Morris, and that his family is in the book business, and that he publishes a small magazine. And the main character then says, "That's how it is." And the young man claims that he thought that he could help them in the new business, even though he is not as good at weaving as Roger Carson. The young lady then asks what business the guy is talking about, and it seems to her that a weaving enterprise cannot have anything to do with a bookstore, but the guy claims that he is talking about the young lady's wedding. The main character then says that it is no secret that most marriages among the aristocracy are of convenience, but this does not concern him in any way, after which the young man asks not to misunderstand him, and he wanted to talk about her wedding dress, veil, and shoes, as well as the dress for the reception and the suit for the Duke. He's interested in everything, right down to the bedding, rugs, and curtains. Claire insists there must be some benefit to him. However, patterned fabrics are already taking over the textile market, not only for dresses, but also for bedding and everything else. So the girl asks him if he thinks she's really using her own wedding ceremony as a billboard. The guy replies that, as far as he knows, she doesn't usually wear gemstones. Well, today it's not just her outfit, but her earrings too. Well, then the young man understands something, and he argues that, with the development of industry and the rise in living standards, the demand for luxury goods will inevitably increase. In the weaving industry, the production of patterned fabrics increased, but the price for them fell and the market expanded in accordance with demand. And the young man asks if the same thing will happen with diamonds. since this ceremony will provide an opportunity to attract consumers who are interested in precious stones but cannot afford them. The protagonist realizes that the Klausners own the two largest diamond mines in the empire. They also control the extraction, processing, and supply of precious stones. This way, they can meet demand. They will also create a colossal market for a similar weaving industry. The young lady asserts that the direction is completely different, but the gist is sound, and everything is true. They're trying to attract new customers with products they've never offered before. After which, the girl also says she's pleased to meet Casey, and she is always glad to see capable people. The young man then takes the lady's hand in his own. However, at that very moment, the Duchess flies into the room and sees this picture, where a young man kisses a young lady's hand, after which the woman screams that this Sum is a dissolute girl. The Duchess also wonders how she dares to get involved with all sorts of men, after which she completely rips the shirt off the young man. After which the main character tells Casey to move away. She also turns to the lady and says how ignorant this is. But the woman only screams at the girl to watch her language. The young lady then claims that she does not warn about the visit and rushes out without knocking, and also begins to scream for no reason, and all this does not look like the behavior of a well-bred lady. And besides, tearing clothes off a stranger is too much. And the girl asks, "Aren't these base and contemptible actions?" The Duchess only becomes angry after this and thinks that even if it were so, how dare the girl leave Eric and do who knows what with another man? After which, she asks what kind of impudence this is, and what the girl was caught on a secret date after the engagement. But the main character then asks who she's talking about on a date. After that, they're silent for a bit. But then the woman asks if the girl is trying to deny the fact that she was just alone with this man. After which the young lady tells her not to make things up, because they were just discussing business. The brunette then simply laughs and insists that the girl is making a good excuse. But in any case, that's not what she came to argue about. Then she asks who the young lady is to lay her hands on diamond mines. Until now, she had been a poor merchant, but now that she had entered the Duke's family, she must be careful and learn how to manage a household. The woman also wondered whether she intended to work with the men digging the earth. The main character then says that yes, she understands that she does not want to argue with this woman about this, and why should she even justify herself, since all the newspapers are under her control? So spreading rumors is impossible. And if this woman had not been Eric's stepmother, she would have thrown her out long ago. After which, the young lady asserts that I am still far from aristocracy. And the woman asks whether she admits her insignificance. But the young lady says that if she doesn't want to create an illegitimate heir, she should be more careful with her words. The woman then cries out, asking what she's talking about when the young lady insists it's a fact. And what's more, Eric entrusted her with the work at the mines. So let the woman make all the claims to him. Well, she doesn't know if he'll want to listen to her, because Eric really trusts her business sense, and the mother knows this. But the woman then asks who the girl called mother. But the young lady wonders if she's mistaken, and that she thought mother and son were inextricably linked, even if they had different last names. The woman then, shocked, asks what the girl is talking about, and the young lady replies that she is, of course, talking about her subordinate, whose last name is Krozik. The Duchess is surprised by this, and Claire claims that such a noble lady as she would never be left alone with a man who is not her husband, and she fully approves of her second marriage, and will also persuade her husband if he is against it. The woman is then in shock and doesn't even know what to say, and the young lady then asks if her mother is okay, after which she claims that she feels unwell and asks the maids to escort her to the restroom. The brunette then turns to the young lady and asks how she dared, and then she is simply led out of the room. The butler then bows to them, and the main character tells him not to let anyone in without prior arrangement, and for the last time, he puts her in such an awkward position, after which the man asks the Baroness for forgiveness. The heroine then sighs, while the Duke looks at the rings. The jeweler then claims that these are the best ones left, and the lady sold everything else. These are also of good quality, but they are colorless and look cheap. The Duke then claims that he himself said they were good, after which he opens one of the boxes and realizes that a diamond is a rare gemstone, and it is also easy to mine, and the percentage of losses during processing is quite low. After the second mine was opened in the duchy, the value of diamonds has been steadily declining, and the best stones are still considered to be bright pink or stronger diamonds. But what is more important is what the girl wants to get, and colorless diamonds are much cheaper than rubies and emeralds, and usually the young lady does not wear jewelry. The man then claims that's why she'll love it, that it's the perfect option without setting, and that it's the most pleasing color. The Duke then says they'll set it in a ring for her. He also insists that a design needs to be developed, and that the guy should send someone to the Baroness. The man then says that it will be done, but the Duke insists that one gift will not be enough, and that he has prepared something else. To which he replies, of course, they used the finest quality diamonds to make the necklace, and colorless diamonds were used as the base. The jeweler also asks if the gentleman plans to wear only new jewelry at the ceremony, and the Duke replies that this is his bride's decision, and almost all the family jewels are in the hands of his mother. Then the jeweler asserts that, with all due respect, Mother will not give them up, to which the Duke replies that yes. He also understands that he needs to get the master's key from her, but there is no need to rush. Claire isn't interested in family traditions, and he has no particular desire to get attached to these incomprehensible customs. And the girl says that she will go into the diamond business. So let him get started. And as Claire says, it'll be the wedding of the century, and a love match at that, judging by the fact that they've bought up all the newspapers. She is serious and may change her opinion about precious stones, but this is undesirable. The guy understands that the duchy does not need advertising, and it is unpleasant that Claire knows more and more people. The man also understands that he was unhappy with the fact that Claire wanted to live in the shadows doing nothing, but now he doesn't like the fact that she is recognized. At this time, the jeweler turns to His Highness, and he says that, yes, they also use family jewels. And those that are specially made? There's nothing wrong with that, and let them do what they can, to which the man replies that he understands. Then someone knocks on the door, and the Duke asks what the servant came for, and he replies that his mother must be tired after the trip, and he keeps repeating the old Duke's name and crying. According to Maria, Baron Delford is there. He also wants to meet the gentleman. The Duchess is sitting with a guy at this time. He also asks how the girl dared to say such a thing to her. The young man then tells the lady to stop crying, because it hurts him to watch her suffer. But she only says that Igawan does not understand and how one can disgrace a person like that. But the young man is interested in what they told her. The woman also understands that Louise learned from the maid the news related to the Klausner diamond mines. It turns out that the owner of the weaving business is reaching out his little hands to the diamonds, and she needed more information. Claire Delford's attempt to do business with the Duke's family could prove decisive for the future of the Klausner Duchy, and an order was given for all free people to search for information, so she wasn't the only one involved in this investigation. But she can't lag behind others in this information war, and when talking about the diamond business, it's impossible not to mention Noah Diamonds, who is closely connected to their family. She also needs to be at least half a step ahead of the others and learn about the Duke's plans. The woman also asks Franz how she should live after facing such humiliation. The man, however, understands that this is someone he doesn't want to meet, and it would be quicker to find out everything from the maid. The Duchess insists that she did ask Franz to take her with him, but Egoin then turns to Madame and asks why she's talking like that. Any duke like her would be upset to hear such a thing. He also suggests that the lady stop shedding tears because it seems as if precious stones are rolling out of her eyes, which makes him very sad. After which the guy wipes the Duchess's eyes from tears. But at the same moment, someone announces that the Duke has arrived. Then the blonde man heads down the corridor, and near the servants who meet him, there stands also the young man who was with the Duchess. The Duke passes by him, and the guy wonders if he is ignoring him or if he really doesn't know. Count Korzik, well, that means he might not know. Or in any case, all of this is connected with the Empress. The young man then just turns around and is about to leave, but then one of the maids. She hands him a note. The young man then heads for the carriage, but then another note is handed to him. The guy is then a little surprised, and when he sits in the carriage, he looks at what is written there about the fact that in 3 days at 8 p.m., he must be at the Central Noah Diamond Store, and the guy understands that this is a note from the Baroness. It is divided into 2 parts, each of which can be interpreted in its own way. And firstly, Korzik had already found out everything. And secondly, Louise's weapon had been bribed. Thirdly, they decided to bribe him too. The Duke, meanwhile, turns to his mother, and she says she heard such disappointing words from Claire. The woman replies that she did nothing wrong and asks if the guy knows what she'll open. And also, does he know that she is dating other men behind his back? It's true, after all. She saw it all with her own eyes. but the Duke insists that Claire is a businesswoman and her job is to meet people. Well, the woman then cries out to her son and asks if he really will give the business to this woman. He also wonders if he's in his right mind to entrust such a task to a woman. The young man replies that Claire owns a weaving business, but asks the Duchess if it's anything like weaving. The young man then claims that diamonds are mined in vast quantities, and the profits from them are gradually declining. And taking care of this is a noble thing, but the woman asks if the guy really believes that she can handle it. And does she know anything about jewelry? Especially since she's a woman no one knows in society? Eric replies that when Claire is in business, she doesn't meet customers like the Duchess sometimes does. The woman also says that even if giving her the mines isn't such a bad idea, he should hire a manager himself in case she colludes with the man and steals their property. However, the man simply tells his mother to stop speculating, and he asks if all she saw was that the girl was dating someone. The brunette is then shocked and wonders if the guy just interrupted her, but the young man only claims that he has decided everything. And I also chose this woman, so let mother not interfere in this anymore. But the brunette only exclaims, "How could a guy say such a thing? She's his mother." The young man insists he respects his mother and will continue to do so, but he asks her to maintain her dignity too. The woman then insists that she's not saying the guy did anything wrong and is simply worried, after which she lies down on the bed, however. The Duke then tells her to give him the cornflower blue key to the safe. The woman then asks in shock why all of a sudden, and the young man replies that she can stay in this room, and if she feels uncomfortable living in the same house with them, then they will build a separate one, and the budget will also be drawn up separately. However, the mother must accept all the changes. After this, the woman simply collapses on the bed and again calls for her now husband. She also asks how he could leave her. The Duke tells the woman not to cry too much, as it's bad for her health. The guy also understands that maybe all this is because of a late agreement, and he decided to get married too late, so his mother does not give him the key, and maybe he needed to take it when his father fell into eternal sleep. But the situation was unsuitable then, and there were no plans to marry. It seems strange to leave the owner's place vacant after taking the key. But looking back, I still feel like giving the key to anyone other than Claire would have been a huge mistake. Airgirl refused the glove, but she'll definitely accept this ring. A little while later, someone comes into the young lady's office and claims that it is from the Duke. The young lady then thanks him and asks if there was a card included, but the woman claims that he did not write anything separately. Claire also wonders what kind of bouquet and box this is, but the nanny only tells the lady to open it. The main character does so, but realizes it's too early for the ring. However, when she opens the box, she realizes it contains a cornflower blue key. The nanny is a little surprised and insists that it's the key of the Duke of Klausner's wife. The young lady understands that, of course, it was supposed to go to her after the wedding, but it seems Louise wasn't so easy parting with it. Therefore, the main character mentally thanks the Duke for bringing it in advance, preventing clashes with her mother-in-law, and she didn't know he was so thoughtful. The nanny then asks when they're having tea, and the main character asks why. The woman insists that the lady received such a valuable item, and it should be celebrated. Claire claims that even if they arrange it, it is unlikely that anyone will come, and the woman then says that the lady does have friends. Well, yes, she replies that there are not many of them in the capital. She also understands that, of course, she had friends at the academy, but they weren't close enough to meet in person. And even if they had, they wouldn't have opened up so much for the sake of meeting. Of course, there's Elliot, but if he becomes the first to know about the key, then rumors will spread instantly. And if she herself, without knowing it, kindles hatred in the mistress, then everything will only get worse. A short time later, a maid enters the Baroness's room and announces that Mr. James and another guest have arrived. The young lady then realizes that since arriving in the capital, meetings with acquaintances have proceeded smoothly. And right before the wedding, right after the future mother-in-law, a talkative uncle comes and the young lady asks who the second guest is, to which the maid claims that this is Count Schneider's daughter, and the main character thinks, could it be that the Count's daughter has arrived? She also doesn't understand why she came, although she thinks the reason is obvious. And she's probably curious about Elliot, but now there's her wedding and the arrival of the boy, the most popular topics of conversation in social circles. The blonde is a curious person, who also loves to be the center of attention. So to get new gossip, she turned to James. Count Schneider's youngest daughter is popular and a rare beauty, and, moreover, She was a late child and was raised with love and care. She is an aristocrat and a prima donna at the opera house. It was previously said that she had tarnished the family's reputation. Well, now, with her profession and her heavenly voice, she's not subject to criticism, and Count Schneider didn't mind. After all, she doesn't sing for the money. Her specialty is choral soprano, and she does everything she can to occasionally receive an invitation to perform on stage. In her own way, she is a symbol of a new era. But in any case, the main character thinks that this is her chance to get a top-level model. Elliot turns to his grandfather at this point and says that he does too, after which the man tells the boy to sit down quickly, and he just claims that he also loves cookies. But the man is only interested in how many times he told him to behave decently. The man then takes one of the cookies and hands it to the boy, who then thanks him. And the main character understands that in any case, his status is unclear and no one knows the boy's last name. And he's not her child. The girl also wonders how she can see the head of the family in a higher position if she's unmarried and raising a child. But that's all in the past now, and the boy has the same pretty face as Alice. At this time, someone else says that the boy is so cute, and it turns out to be a lady with blonde hair. She then claims that she will treat the boy to cookies, and the uncle turns to him, and he says that since he took it, he needs to say thank you, to which the young man agrees. Well, Uncle also says he looks embarrassed. The blonde lady thinks how adorable he is, and if you think about it, this boy is the spitting image of Mr. Eric, but he doesn't look like his mother at all. And the girl thinks that this is great, and it's also good that she was convinced of this. Mom wanted to send him to some boarding school in the village, but she wouldn't wish that on an innocent child. And besides, the Duke needs an heir, and she doesn't want children, so the girl understands that she needs to be a good stepmother to this boy. At this moment, the main character enters the room, and the young man, seeing her, immediately runs up to her. The lady with the blonde hair then has a smile on her face, tells the Baroness that she is glad to meet her, and that she is Iris from County Schneider. The main character then smiles at her capital with a fatherly smile, and claims that she did not think that, being in such a position, she would be honored with a personal visit from a lady. The girl then claims that she came without an invitation from their family, but the lady welcomes her so warmly, and she's probably too curious, but asks not to be scolded for it. Claire asks what she's talking about, and the girl is very curious after all. The blonde then says, "That's the man who stole her blue dress." The main character then thinks about that dress, and he wonders if she's really talking about that very thing. And the girl shouldn't have known about it. It seems like she wants to see how she'll react. Claire also realizes she did this 5 years ago, and it is impossible for anyone to know who was in the Duke's room then. But if that is the case, then all of Duke Klausner's servants and guards must be fired. It is unlikely that the Duke himself would have told anyone. And if these two were in such a relationship, she would not have come there now. And the main character understands that over the past 5 years, no one could have found out about this. So she's bluffing, and the main character wonders what the lady is talking about. Iris then says it was probably her dress. However, the main character claims that this is strange, and he asks the girl if Eric did something to her dress. But the blonde only smiles, and he also tells the girl not to pretend that she doesn't know. And she knows for sure that she took her dress 5 years ago. But the lady with red hair then wonders if the girl is really saying that when she left Eric's bedroom, she took someone else's clothes from there. Iris replies that, of course, but the main character comes closer to her and claims that if these were Lady Iris's clothes. So it turns out she was in that bedroom so often that she left her things there. The girl is a little surprised by this, and the main character wonders if this is true, because this was the only time she had to take clothes from Eric, but apparently they were prepared there. Or maybe she took off the dress herself, and the main character insists that can't be true. The blonde then doesn't even know what to do, and she starts crying, and Claire is a little surprised. Iris then asks how a girl can say such a thing. She simply wondered what had happened to the dress. The protagonist realizes that if they had been there together, she would have exposed her, and she wonders if the makeup is waterproof, since it didn't even run. The blonde lady claims a dear friend designed this look especially for her, after which the main character thinks this girl is definitely a prima donna, given her acting and expressiveness are top-notch. The man then turns to Claire and asks if she's doing this out of petty envy. The protagonist is a little surprised, and the man claims that she could have misunderstood the words of the Count's daughter. But how could a well-bred lady so defame the honor of another person? Not an uncle, and also claims that he did say that she should be careful with her words, because a girl should not only be smart, but also know when to show herself, and not mess around with commoners and think about how to get around others. But the main character then interrupts her uncle and asks, who is now trying to tarnish the family's reputation in front of others? The man becomes a little nervous after this, and then turns to Mrs. Schneider, and it's Claire who's asking for forgiveness. However, the main character interrupts her uncle, after which she turns to Charles and tells him to call a carriage for Mrs. Schneider. Yusha then asks if she's really telling him this, and the main character wonders if there's anyone there besides him. The guy then tells the lady to stop crying like that and hands her his handkerchief, but the girl just runs out of the room. Claire then thinks she's betting her dinner that she wouldn't burst into tears alone. The guy then runs after the young lady and says that he will take her there, and also that Mrs. Claire did not want to bring the guests to tears and send them away. At this time, Elliot asks his aunt if everything is okay, and she replies that everything is fine. The boy also asks if they had a fight, but the main character replies that no one had a fight, but the young man only claims that no, and they had a fight because the aunt got angry and even blushed. The main character thinks that she shouldn't behave so frighteningly in front of the child, after which she apologizes to him, but he thinks that it's so hard. Claire also tells her uncle that she didn't ask him to be silent or to be quiet as a mouse, but if he wants to receive respect as the eldest in the family, then let him behave accordingly. The man then claims that she's the one being rude today and brought the guest to tears, and he boldly points it out to his uncle. But the main character asks if he's really saying she was bold, after which he claims that even the Duke does not allow himself to say such things to her, and although she is his niece, he is not the one who can be rude to her. And the expensive suit he wears, the cane, the silk tie, the hat, the jewelry, and the money they live on and spend on the upkeep of the estate. The young lady asks if he's ever wondered where it all comes from. After all, this can't be an inheritance left by his deceased grandparents, so let him show at least a drop of respect to the younger ones who care for him, and let him remember to be careful what he sees, hears, and says, because he knows just as well as she does why they should become related to the Duke. Then the young lady leaves, and the boy tells his aunt that she's definitely angry. The girl then asks if he's scared, and the boy replies that he's sad. The young lady also claims she had to become as prickly as a hedgehog so it wouldn't hurt. Elliot then says, I don't want you to get hurt, after which the main character says that everything is fine, and also understands that judging by Iris's behavior, this will not spread further. But the girl also thinks that she does not care at all about what she is going to do. After all, this wedding would only take place for Elliot's safety, and everything else wasn't that important. Even as she was leaving the Duke's bedroom, she thought there had been a girl there, and they must have met, since her clothes were there. Well, the main character then thinks about how he proposed, and she also wonders if she stole someone else's boyfriend. Well, the young lady still thinks that this cannot be, and when she thinks about it, she starts shaking all over. At this time, someone else knocks on the room, and the girl asks a little angrily who it is, to which the guy replies that it is Gray. The main character is then a little surprised, remarking on how quickly time has flown by. She also realizes that it's time to meet her mother-in-law's friend. Meanwhile, the young man heads down the street to the designated store. He understands that the price of precious stones depends on their rarity. If the Noah mines cease production, the price will rise significantly. Anticipating this, my grandfather launched Noah Diamonds 30 years ago. Furthermore, due to the impossibility of maintaining the family's wealth, the Duke's family only owned land, so they decided to take the risk. But time passed, and huge diamond mines were developed in the duchy one after another, and these diamonds were of the same quality. It was impossible to resist the Duke, so they were offered control over production volumes, but the required quantity was too high. Common gemstones no longer had value, and since diamonds were no longer considered valuable stones, most of them were destined to gather dust in safes. However, the Acadian business owner decided to take advantage of this without hesitation, and now the young man understands that he needs to make a name for himself. At this time, someone opens the door for the guy and says that he has arrived, after which they go inside, and Roger asks if it is dark there. Another young man replies that yes, and a little while later he already sees the main character in one of the rooms. Claire says she's glad to meet him, and asks if they've met anywhere before. The guy replies that, as far as he remembers, they attended mathematics classes together at the academy, and he is happy to see the Baroness again. The young lady then comments on how good his memory is, and that it wasn't all that remarkable. After which the young man claims that it turns out her memory isn't entirely accurate, and it's hard not to notice the younger class who is constantly arguing with the Duke. He also talks about the younger students and doesn't want to lose. And even if the girl is not a duchess, but a baroness, this is enough to attract attention. After this, a slightly nasty atmosphere hangs in the room. An ogre offers to talk about diamonds, after which he hands over a contract. The young man then looks at it and sees that it says that all diamonds of 2 carats and below must be sold cheap to a weaving mill, and even his father has already signed it. But if they throw money around like that, all they can do is watch the price rise. At this point, the main character asks him if he knows they're starting a diamond business and plan to dramatically increase demand for the jewelry. And it's safe to say that buying the newspapers was the first step. As demand increases, not only the Klausners, but also jewelers will see benefits, especially those with large inventories of high-quality diamonds like Crozier's. Before becoming an aristocrat, she was a small trader, and one could say that she was a retailer. And she also cannot afford to separate the huge profits from the one who practically monopolized Noah Diamonds. And also, if they enter into this contract, they will become equal partners. And if the contract is terminated, then she will return the desired quantity of products at the purchase price. The guy then reads that it says, investments in the appraisal company Maurice, and the joint development of diamond appraisal criteria, and the appraisal of all diamonds in the Maurice Company. The girl claims that they do this so that wealthy commoners can afford to buy precious stones, and so that the residents of the capital have at least one. But first, they will set standards and price estimates so that even the most undiscerning buyer can judge a reasonable price. And to guarantee a return of a certain amount, should anything happen, she could guarantee a repeat purchase. Her diamond isn't the kind of stone that can be easily damaged. The young man then looks at these contracts with a little surprise and asks if she is talking about commoners. He understands that if you think about it, this is not just entertainment, and that patterned fabrics, toys, this whole business is designed for the middle-class market. At this time, the main character asks if everything is clear, to which the guy replies that, yes, everything is clear to him too. And if the weaving business was such a success, Claire will certainly succeed in other areas. Especially with the Duke's power at her disposal, she has no chance of failure. The girl also claims that she always tries to treat her partners and managers well, and, of course, expects the same from him. The guy then claims that if they sign this contract, she will no longer be able to represent Her Majesty. And he asks if this is not enough, but the girl then replies that in fact, she can buy everything herself, and they involve the Krozik family, which overall isn't beneficial simply because of their position. The young man then asks what the lady wants from him, and the main character just smiles and tells him to tell everything he knows about Countess Schneider. The young man then wonders if this girl knows that Iris is one of the few who is being watched by the Empress herself, but he wonders how long she has known this, and if she knows this information. Do the fabric merchants know about it? If the Duke also knows, then we cannot relax, and it turns out that she is aware of the Empress's interests, and her interest is focused on the succession to the throne. The Count's third son poked his nose into this matter and was plunged into eternal slumber, but he was only a secretary at court, and Her Majesty was keeping an eye on the Countess, even though he thought it was just paranoia. But over the last 2 to 3 years, plans for her have changed dramatically. But the young man still understands that this is not something to think about now, and if he is caught thinking about it, he may lose trust. But if he tells only the obvious, he will be considered useless. After which, the guy claims that the Count's wife has access to the Crown Prince's palace, and the main character wonders if he's talking about the Lotus Palace. But this is the Empress's estate. The girl also understands that, angry at Iris, she unknowingly asked the question, expecting to receive some information about her, but she had no idea such a thing would come up. Judging by the hint on the dress, there's definitely something there. The girl could not even imagine that the Countess and the Empress were somehow connected, and by asking questions to the spy, it was obvious that some information about her would be revealed. The Count's wife, Katya, was the Count's former lover and now his second wife. She was an opera singer of former aristocratic descent, but this is not certain. Despite her dubious origins, the Count's family structure is strong. The older brothers, caring for their younger sister, facilitated her official marriage, and the girl wonders why the Empress holds secret meetings, since they are not such close people, and probably few people know about it. After which, the main character claims that 20 years have already passed since the Countess's second marriage, and her assistant replies that 17 years ago, because Mrs. Iris was 6 years old at the time. The protagonist then realizes that it's 17 years ago, considering Iris's age. At that time, the Empress was only a princess, and the Count was very far from politics, and their paths could not cross. And it turns out that the third son was immersed in eternal sleep. Now the main character asks if he is following the Count's wife, and the guy replies that no, and he received this information while visiting Mrs. Iris. The young lady then says that that's it, and thinks for a bit, after which she tells the guy to maintain his current relationship with Her Majesty. The girl also claims that they ask to hand her over and let the guy behave as usual, because they're concluding the second contract not with Mr. Johann, but with Count Krosik, and all she wants is for copies of the reports on the Klausner estate to be passed on to her. The guy then says he understands the young lady, and the main character insists that Casey will visit him with the contract within 2 days, to which he agrees. The young lady then turns to Rosie and asks her to accompany the gentleman, after which the guy leaves, and Casey claims that he is not someone who can be trusted, after which the young lady claims that then she will have to bribe him, and thinks that from the very beginning she did not expect any loyalty, because a bribed spy can be lured with money. Well, he won't be able to give the Empress the winnowing. The Count is economically dependent on the diamond business, and he seems shrewd. The young man also asks whether it's absolutely necessary to use this man. He asserts that, of course, he has no right to interfere in his mistress's affairs, and simply wouldn't be better off excluding the spy from the plan. The main character claims that this is the easiest way to scout out the situation, and that it is impossible to prevent surveillance of such a large family as the duchy. And also, if we get rid of Johann, then someone else will be found, and it is better to control the information through the hands of an already known spy, because this is economically beneficial, since most of the estate's spies are controlled by Johann. The guy also asks if the lady will tell the Duke about this, but Noda replies that this is only her business, and he is too noble for that. The girl also understands that, until now, everything was fine and Louise was not able to get closer to the secrets of the family and production. But even if she had gained access, she was not interested. At first, the girl suspected that Johann was luring information out through seduction, but this was not the case. And the Empress isn't interested in money and business, the duchy, or politics. In this matter, the most important things are inheritance rights and connections. And up until now, Eric hadn't cared about either. But now everything is different, and in order to protect the boy, it is necessary to keep the secret, because he is a small sprout that the Empress wants to crush. The girl also thinks that if only nothing happened, they would think of her as a happy Cinderella. Or better yet, that they would consider this marriage a source of money. After all, in any case, she doesn't think that there is a spy network in the Lotus Palace, and the idea of swaying the Count's wife to her side in order to spy on Iris is simply incomprehensible. Because what use would she be? The main character also thinks that perhaps she lured the mother to use her daughter, but the question is why she did it. After which they are silent for a while, and the young man looks at the young lady, after which she asks what is wrong, but he replies that nothing, and he is just frozen, and also thinks that the lady jumped to conclusions about Lady Iris based only on rumors. The protagonist then asks what these rumors are about. The young man replies that they were talking about a relationship between the Duke and Lady Iris, and also that they dated before their marriage. The young man also claims that this is, of course, a false rumor, and that these two, who were considered eligible candidates for marriage in social circles, did not marry upon reaching marriageable age. The main character just smirks and thinks, that's how it is. Meanwhile, the Duke heads to the young lady's office and realizes that since the light is on, it seems she's still working. Claire is a contradictory girl, and she said that she would live diligently. But this is not true, because living diligently only means enjoying your privileges like other aristocrats, and she is not that kind of person at all. And this swinish aristocrat speaks while being an aristocrat. But even if he changes these expressions and mindsets, despite all his efforts to maintain his position and status, he has never met a more aristocratic person than Claire. If she decides to do something, she will never back down, regardless of whether it is her personal decision or obedience to an order. And although the girl abandoned her studies, it was only to hide her abilities from others, and nothing special happened that day. The Duke insisted the girl could clearly do better, and wondered if she wasn't trying at all. And the talented girl was not even listed in the student rankings, so she must have been intentionally getting low grades. The young lady then claimed that it was very wonderful to hear him speak of her skills, And the Duke asked what that meant, to which the girl replied that this meant that it was certainly pleasant to hear such things, but even if she, as the daughter of a baron, received high marks, she would not be able to use them anywhere. The boy realizes he doesn't remember what he answered then. Now the Duke enters the young lady's office, and Gray asks if he really came at such an hour. The Duke merely inquires whether he has anything to do with this matter, to which he replies that, of course, since a contract was required. After which, the blonde man moves on, and the main character asks why he came so late. The guy claims she still hasn't returned home, and he thought he should walk her home. He also asks if his servant has come, to which the girl replies that he has. But frankly speaking, arranging a meeting via a note sent 20 or 30 minutes in advance is not the best idea. Many found that it is impossible to send it faster, and the young lady claims that the meeting is scheduled at least a week in advance, after which the Duke asks if she really didn't want to see him. Claire replies that now is not the right time, and understands that if you had already invented the telephone, she would have asked him not to come. Meanwhile, the guy asks how dinner went, and, after all, the process of becoming an heir to the throne is currently underway. If anyone had wanted to argue with him about this, they would certainly have brought in his mother, not distant relatives or servants. The protagonist then asks, "What about Chairman Neumann?" The Duke replies that he's a progressive man, and Claire asks if he agrees. The blonde replies that the fact that the Baron has the blood of the ruling family is already progressive, and asks if that's not true. The young lady says she will never understand it, and Eric claims that arrogance is her style, not his, and the main character asks what he means. After which, the guy claims that she says that she does not understand this progressiveness, but there is a difference between Aron, the Baroness, and him, who is the owner of the duchy. So it turns out that deep down, she can't accept it. The young lady then insists that this is something new, after which they head back to the estate, and the boy asks if she did a good job. However, the girl claims that now she is more concerned with the affairs of the Klausners, and not Krozik and his ilk. The Duke then says that this is how it is, after which he looks at the lady and turns to her. But when the girl asks what he wants, the guy only remains silent, after which he says that nothing. After that, they go outside, and the young man asks why she is angry, and the main character asks if he is talking about her. The guy then claims that she is raising her voice, but the young lady says that she is not at all, and what could have made her angry? Because she is just tired. That is why it seems that way to him. And also today, she was just planning to finish discussing the terms of the contract, but she had to get pretty nervous, which is why she looks tired. After this, the Duke remains silent, and the main character thinks it's a bit strange, and that their conversation is over. It also seems he's not even thinking of responding. Well, he can't pretend he's not involved, and that's been enough for the last 5 years. The young man then turns to Claire again, and the main character cannot stand it. After which she replies that, yes, and this is really not for her. The girl also asks what his relationship is with Iris Schneider. She also understands that they should first talk about the Lotus Palace, but the incident with the dress won't leave her mind. She doesn't want to dredge up the past, but she needs to sort things out. The Duke then replies that they've been friends with the Schneider family for 3 generations, and that her father has cared for Iris since childhood. The protagonist asks if that's all there is to it, after which the young man asks if there should be anything else. The young lady asks if rumors spread quickly, given that they're in a marriage of convenience, and he's dating someone else. The guy then asks why he'd lie to Claire, but she asks what about the dress. The guy then asks what dress she is talking about. The girl claims that it was the dress she was wearing when she left his room, and that it belonged to Iris Schneider. The blonde then asks what she's talking about, and the main character wonders if he was really dating 2 women at once, because it's simply unbelievable. And if only she knew. Well, the Duke then simply approaches the young lady and kisses her. The main character is still angry and tries to push him away. Then she claims she's actually angry, and the guy suggests she get even more angry, after which the main character asks if he's really saying this to hang her. But the Duke simply insists that she's so hot when she's angry. Afterwards, he sits down next to her, and the main character asks him what the hell he's doing. He replies that he asked Pavel to bring her a dress that morning, since he tore her clothes. The main character then asks when, and the guy replies, when he woke up. But Claire replies, that's not what she meant, and the guy insists that if she wants to know where it's from, she should just ask. And it's strange that he and Iris ended up in the same atelier. The guy also insists that he told her to buy the dress somewhere good, and the main character then asks when he woke up, and also whether he didn't wake her up as soon as he opened his eyes, because then he should have woken up at least an hour earlier. Well then, the young lady suddenly falls silent, and the guy asks why, and if she thinks she looks funny in her sleep, to which the girl replies that no. The Duke tells her not to worry that her jealousy might seem inappropriate, because she's not the only one. The protagonist asks what he's talking about, and when she's ever been jealous. The guy claims that he is not the kind of person who would build a relationship with a girl who is not married to him, after which the young lady becomes embarrassed and wonders if he's really saying that to her face. The guy then just moves closer and kisses her again. A little while later, the girl is already lying in bed and realizes that she has taken over the place. But it looks like she overdid it with alcohol. The young woman also says she's feeling a bit hot, after which she realizes she fell asleep covered in sweat, feeling terrible, and the bed is uncomfortable. She also thinks she'd like someone to walk on her back. And at moments like these, she longs to return to the modern world of the proletariat, wishing for some kind of boiler, air conditioning, heated floors, or at least a heating pad, bandages, paracetamol, and a spring mattress. Then the girl gets out of bed and tells him to let her go already. But the guy suggests she just sleep, because it's still a long time until dawn. After which, he lays her down on the bed, and the main character hits him, but realizes that he has no reaction even to the hit, and he pretends that he doesn't care. The girl also understands what it means. Her arms hurt, and asks if it's because of the bed or if he's just exercising. The guy then asks what she's talking about, and the young lady simply asks if his back hurts. After which, the young man claims he can't even be a gentleman in bed. Claire cries out, "Who's talking about this?" and asks when he ever acted like a gentleman and how he can avoid back pain after sleeping on such a bed. The girl also asks if there are ropes at the bottom of this bed, and the guy replies that it is possible, and the young lady claims that a new one should be bought. She also wonders why he is looking at her like that, and didn't he say that he would break the bed? But the guy asks what? After which, the young lady claims that one needs to know how to use advanced technologies, and that a bed is not just furniture, but a whole science. She also asks if they can change the bed, since she sleeps there now anyway, but Pony replies that no, and he thought that she would want to settle in separately. The young woman then insists that she did say he needed a private office and study, and asks if the same applies to the bedroom. The guy then realizes that it's perfectly normal to use different spaces, and he thought she knew that. The guy also says that if she doesn't want to, then let her say so, because there are still a lot of rooms there, and the young lady claims that she understands everything. And it's also inconvenient when someone just goes off the rails with demands to change the furniture and divide it. After which, the young man rises above the young lady, and the girl then, a little shocked, claims that her whole back hurts. The guy also claims that she did say that the problem was in the bed, after which she was having trouble. But the main character says that it wasn't in him either, and in general, this is only one reason. When morning comes, the girl claims that it is definitely time to get up, and the Duke suggests that she lie down because there is still plenty of time until morning. But the girl replies that no, not much, and also that she needs to check how Roger is coping with her assignment, and there are things to do in the company. The guy then says what she will do tomorrow, and the young lady claims that other things are planned for tomorrow. After which the Duke says, "What a meaningless world this is where you have to work so hard and no one even talks about a comfortable life." The young lady replies that in order to live comfortably tomorrow, she needs to work today, even though she cannot maintain a balance between work and personal life. The Duke then suggests that she leave everything to Carson, after which the main character finally sighs and agrees, and also asserts that today she will rest, and even if tomorrow she plunges into eternal sleep, then these are already problems for tomorrow. The man then asks if she will involve more people, and the young lady asks if there are many people she can trust, and if this is not an issue that can be resolved with money alone. The Delfords and McClousners are different, and there aren't many qualified people there, even among the most loyal servants. The Delfords have almost no servants, and most of the talented graduates of the academy belong to other families or have sponsors. And without a patron, it is difficult to even establish their identity, because this is a world where blood ties decide everything, and also the place of birth, and lying down one's own fame. And the majority of the most talented are easily able to steal a trade secret, either for themselves or for their master. And in fact, they're spies. And finding someone like Roger is a stroke of luck. The blonde then insists that it would be best to rest and clear his head of all thoughts. The young lady claims that she simply doesn't like it, and the guy claims that then she could do some sports. To which the young lady replies that she feels like she's not training, but rather becoming a training bag, and he's just using her. But the guy then asks if it's time to call him something else, and the young lady claims that it makes her feel a bit awkward, after which the young man merely kisses her hand, and the main character is a little surprised. The young man then asks why she's so embarrassed, and the young lady replies that it doesn't matter. She also realizes that memories from 5 years ago have come flooding back, and they have long been forgotten due to alcohol. That day, she accidentally spilled a glass on her hand and tried to find a handkerchief, but the guy gave her his, and just like the previous night, everything repeated itself. Now the young lady just tousles the guy's hair, and he looks at her in bewilderment, after which the girl understands that she wanted to take revenge on him. But he is so handsome even when he is disheveled. Then the girl turns around and insists that he is, in fact, an enemy of democracy. The guy asks what kind of nonsense that is, and the girl replies that she doesn't know. After which, the young man turns to her and tries to turn her face towards him. The young lady simply insists that when he gets up, he'll buy her clothes, but only if they're not made for someone else. So the young man agrees and says he'll buy the entire studio. The girl also offers to go together, after which the young man will remain silent about the main character asking him to answer. The Duke then says okay, and the young lady turns to him with a smile on her face. Meanwhile, Elliot just sulks and paces the room menacingly. He also claims that the aunt must have gotten lost somewhere, to which the nanny replies to the young master that, no, and that she stayed with the Duke yesterday. The boy wonders if his aunt has stayed too long and fallen asleep, and the woman just smiles. The young man also screams that his uncle is bad because he offended everyone by making friends with him, and plays only with his aunt, and the nanny says that their young master is upset, but after that, the young man only sulks. And then he runs out of the room, and also screams at her not to laugh, because he hates her and Jenny too. The boy also slams the door, and the nanny then claims that he must be very angry. "Come on, I'm the maid," she says. But there's nothing to be done, since this is the first time the mistress has left the young master alone overnight. And sometimes, because of work, she couldn't put him to bed, but she never spent the night at home. And at the Baron's estate, she always received guests in her study. At this point, the boy asks if they really think they're getting rid of him, but he will scold his uncle and will not let him take his aunt, and will also get angry at his aunt.